Hey everyone, we'll be getting started in a couple of minutes. We're still waiting on one of our co-chairs to arrive, and we'll be getting going soon.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, do you need anything before we get started?
Yes.
Do you need anything before we get started?
Sorry, I can't understand.
Do you need anything before we get started? From Max or myself?
No, thank you. Is Anthony here?
I don't see him yet either.
We'll wait till he arrives, then you can give your instructions, and then I'll start the meeting.
Sounds good. Oh, Anthony has arrived.
Yeah. Okay. Is it quite 6:30 yet, or?
Yes, it's 1 moment after 6:30.
Okay. Well, let's give them another minute.
Great. Be right back.
Oh, we'll wait for Anthony to get back.
Sure.
Max, while we're waiting, do you want to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Sure. All right. Let's see. So welcome, everyone. If this is your first time joining us, everyone will remain muted throughout tonight's presentation except committee co-chairs Elizabeth and Anthony. Following the presentation, co-chairs will call on members of the public that wish to speak. You can participate by going to the reactions icon and pressing raise hand and not the wave or thumbs up feature. And only press it once, because if you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you're calling tonight from the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once the co-chairs call on you. The chat is for technical support only to help with Zoom software problems and not to ask questions of the co-chairs. They're not able to see the chats. If you have an older version of Zoom, you'll need to go down to the participants section at the bottom where you'll find the raise hand feature there. And finally, please don't raise your actual hand or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you. And in addition to that, we're going to be trying something new tonight. Tonight we'll be utilizing a new poll feature, which is intended to limit repetitive comments by offering everyone a chance to agree or disagree with each commenter immediately after they speak. After each speaker, a pop-up will appear on your screen for about 10 seconds that will give you the opportunity to state whether you agree or disagree with the comments made. After each poll closes, the results will then be displayed on your screen for everyone to see. The results of these polls will become part of the public record for the meeting. Please use this feature as your opportunity to vocalize your opinion unless you have something new to add to the conversation. And now I'll hand it over to Elizabeth and Anthony.
Welcome to you all to the Zoning and Development Committee meeting for April of this year. My name is Elizabeth Ashby. I'm co-chair, and my other co-chair is Anthony Cohn, who's hidden somewhere. And we're so glad you all came. And we'll start right away, which is a discussion of the Blood Center Longfellow Tower. This is in the ULURP process, so I think next month the community board will be holding 2 land use meetings. One will be on May 12th and the other on May 25th or 26th. and that starts the process, which is under a clock, and it ends up at the city council as the final stage, and they rule subject to a veto by the mayor if he decides to veto whatever decision they take. We have asked two people to make presentations. We've asked the Blood Center to make a presentation and the community to make a presentation. The Blood Center has decided not to participate, so we've asked Marty Bell of the community to make his presentation. After his presentation, we will call on the public, and I'm afraid we have to set a time limit of 2 minutes. And as Max described to you, in order to move the thing and make every new idea presented, you, rather than saying that you agree with them and making your 2 minutes, you will raise your hands, and we thought that that probably would move the agenda a little longer. Okay, I think Marty Bell is here, so I will turn it over to him.
Oh, I see him. Go ahead, Marty.
Will, can I screen share?
Yes, 1 second. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. When this project was first presented in November, the Blood Center offered one misleading statement and one deceptive photo after another, comparing the proposed tower to just apartment buildings along the avenues and not to any other similar mid-block buildings. They showed it on a nice, quiet, empty street, when in fact East 67th is probably the most crowded street narrow street on the Upper East Side, with school buses and a crosstown bus on that narrow street.
Not only are we New York, we're New York through and through. And we, it's in our name.
New York through and through, but they failed to mention that they've spent almost $100 million over the past several years to acquire other blood banks around the country, money they could have used to build a new as-of-right facility without a huge commercial tower. So the Blood Center's been misleading us since November, but at the last zoning committee meeting in March, I believe they switched from being merely deceptive to lying. The Blood Center's argument, their entire argument for the proposed tower on this site, they asserted was based on two alleged facts. One, the Blood Center's important research is all focused on collaborating with 3 nearby world-class institutions, Memorial Sloan Kettering, Weill Cornell, and Rockefeller. And 2, they claim it's essential for collaborating medical researchers to be in close physical proximity with one another.
Your Blood Center needs this project in this location to continue to thrive. Scientific collaborations are essential to our research outcomes. Physical proximity for day-to-day interactions with collaborators is essential to speed discoveries from the lab into new patient treatments and vaccines. Neighboring institutions depend on the synergies that only physical proximity can provide.
The reality is that it is a significant benefit to the Blood Center, it's a significant benefit to the other institutions, that they all be within walking distance and short walking distance to each other.
And lest anyone miss their arguments, 2 days later, the Blood Center submitted a proximity report showing and reinforcing how important this proximity argument is to their attempt to justify the project. The report makes the same 2 points made at the zoning committee. 1, the Blood Center is collaborating with MSK, Weill Cornell, and Rockefeller on lots of important medical research. And 2, it's essential for collaborating medical researchers to be in close physical proximity of one another. But while the consultant's report had several dozen footnotes, they made it clear that their conclusions about the extent of work done with the neighboring institutions and about how proximity is necessary for medical research was all drawn on information they were fed by the Blood Center. So we're back to the two reasons these guys gave a justification in the March meeting for needing to build the tower on East 67th Street. Mr. Purvis is the EVP of the Blood Center and according to their website, in charge of PR, and Paul Selver is their real estate lawyer. Turning to their claim that close physical proximity is essential for collaborating research, maybe there's someone better able to address that than a PR guy and a real estate lawyer. Here is a letter to the community board from the director of the world famous VIC, the Vaccine and Immunotherapy Center at Massachusetts General Hospital, on the faculty of Harvard Medical School, 100 publications, 30 patents, and he's, as he says, involved in various aspects of medical research for more than 25 years, and states, quote, "Never once has close physical proximity been sole determinative factor. It's even more evident today as research collaborators are essentially moved to highly efficient virtual platforms. One need look no further than the daily news for confirmation that close physical proximity does not represent a go, no go for collaborating researchers. While we often hear the Pfizer vaccine, it's actually the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine developed by Pfizer in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and BioNTech in someplace in Germany." So that's one person. But here is a letter to the community board from the former director of research at the Mayo Clinic, who's been funded continuously by the NIH for over 30 years. NIH is huge. It's 500, he has 500 publications and 28 patents. He states unequivocally, medical research today is a national and international network of collaborating investigators. And here's the important part, Blood Center. Critical time-sensitive samples of blood and plasma are routinely sent and processed from other countries around the world using state-of-the-art methods. Quote, "Let me make it clear that adjacent location geographically is no longer a requirement or needed. As an example, one of many, a collaborator in Germany is developing a test to measure a new discovered enzyme. The blood from a group of volunteer patients with specific heart problems is obtained in Denmark, and all those samples are then sent to the Mayo Clinic to be assayed." Finally, an email from Dr. Ilyas Zerhouni to Gail Brewer addressing specifically the close physical proximity argument related to this blood bank project. Dr. Zerhouni was the vice dean of Johns Hopkins Medical School, senior fellow of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He was appointed by President Obama as our country's first vice presidential envoy for scientific collaboration. And until his retirement 2 years ago, he was president of global research for a major pharmaceutical company. And most importantly, Dr. Zerhouni was the 17th director of the NIH, the National Institute of Health. And he writes to us, dealing with this project, today, modern scientific organizations are driven to access skilled talents wherever they are located and work virtually. As president of R&D for a large company, I manage sites that were located across all continents. As former director of NIH, the criterion of close proximity was not required for collaborating scientists. So much for the need for close physical proximity. I would take the view of the director of the NIH over the PR guy and the real estate lawyer. But now let's look at their second claim that the Blood Center is allegedly doing so much research with MSK, Weill Cornell, and Rockefeller that they need to build this tower on East 67th Street. Looking at the Blood Center website, there's only one thing that comes up if you search for collaborating with partners in the neighborhood.
One of the things that I appreciate the most about our relationship with New York Blood Center is the partnership that we have. I can't say enough about, and it's not, and we don't see that in every single supplier that we would potentially use.
In other words, the collaboration here is a supplier, a vendor, not a co-researcher. But that can't be what the blood center is referring to, since the blood they're supplying is stored in Queens, not on East 67th Street. So let's give the blood center their due. They do research, and in fact, I'll be the first to admit they do important, very critical research. But is it all, or even mostly at MSK, Weill Cornell, and Rockefeller, as they indicate, and as they give as the reason for building this tower on East 67th Street? The Blood Center website lists their researches. There are 19. One thing about research I can tell you, when it's completed, the researchers need to publish a paper so the results of the research are shared with the world. So I spent several days looking at the last 3 papers published by each of these researchers to see with whom they were collaborating. Was it MSK, Weill Cornell, and Rockefeller, as the PR guy and the lawyer tell us? Actually, one of the investigators had no publication, so there were only 18 to look at. Times 3 papers each, that's 54 papers. Let's see. I can submit this, I'll go through them in a little detail, but that's just a quick look. Here are some examples. Here you see the blood center, and look, and this is an important one because they keep talking about their COVID research. Who did they work with? They worked with someone in Baltimore, Rochester, Minnesota, Missouri, Baltimore again, Davenport, Iowa, California, Michigan, Columbia, New Jersey, Montefiore in the Bronx, and Rhode Island. No MSK, no Weill Cornell, and no Rockefeller. Here's another one that they have on the site. Who are they collaborating with? China, Houston, Cambridge, Boston, China. Here's another one. Minnesota, Philadelphia, Milwaukee, New Haven, London, France. There's the blood center, Oregon, and Lebanon. Again, no MSK, no Weill Cornell, and no Rockefeller. Here we see Weill Cornell and Memorial Sloan Kettering, but it's not that they're just working and collaborating with them. Also, we see Mount Sinai, Arizona, Utah, Kansas, North Carolina. This is all on one research project. Washington, D.C., Georgia, Italy, California, Illinois, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Italy, Mount Sinai, Minnesota, NYU, and Texas. Again, Memorial Sloan Kettering, but it's also Canada, Arizona, United Kingdom, Ohio, Illinois, North Carolina. Rockefeller with China, Cincinnati, New Haven, and another China. Here's Rockefeller with Boston, Cambridge, Boston. You can read it. I went through all of them. These were the 2 where the research was just with Weill Cornell and Rockefeller University. All the others were either with none of those 3 neighboring institutions, and occasionally with some of them, but with many, many others around the country. This is a summary of all the people with whom those researchers at the Blood Center have been collaborating, as revealed by their last 3 research papers. Highlighting MSK, there were 8 collaborations, Rockefeller 5, Weill Cornell 5. Columbia had more. They could go up to the Bronx and be closer to their collaborators than 67th Street. Massachusetts had more than all of them put together. California, Pennsylvania, Maryland had 3 times as many as Weill Cornell or Rockefeller. Heck, they could move it to China and be more and closer to their collaborators, or Germany. What's really important, though, is that only 2 of the 54 were the collaborators, either just MSK, Weill Cornell, or Rockefeller. That's 3.7% of their research. That's what they're basing this on. And it's clear they knew they were lying, because when the Blood Center came here in November, they had this slide. But in March, when they came back, somehow it got lost because it didn't fit with their new narrative of trying to justify building the tower on East 67th Street, just talking about how they're doing it, just doing all this research with MSK, Weill, and Cornell, and Rockefeller, and about needing close proximity. Because back in November, they could tell us about Columbia, the Bronx, Montefiore, Texas, Ohio. When I was growing up, if you wanted to know something, you looked in the Encyclopedia Britannica. Today, it's what do they call it? Wikipedia. So I looked up the Blood Center at Wikipedia, and they do talk about one important, in the summary, there's one and only one research project that's discussed, very important, that the Blood Center was involved with. But it was at Weill Cornell, Memorial Sloan Kettering, or Rockefeller? No, it was UC Davis, University of California in Davis. That's, if you want to walk, that's 941 hours. I can just hear the real estate lawyers saying, not just walking distance, but close walking distance. That's 39 days without sleeping. So you've got the PR guy and the real estate lawyer giving the Blood Center's argument, their whole argument for building the tower on this site. The Blood Center is collaborating with MSK, Weill Cornell, and Rockefeller on lots of important research. Somehow it's only 3.7% based on the most recent reports. And two, it's essential for collaborating medical researchers to be in close proximity of one another. That is, if you believe the PR guy and the lawyer rather than the head of the NIH. They can say that, but the facts are the facts. And as John Adams once said, they can be stubborn things. And the facts showed that the Blood Center's claims were all lies. You can try and argue with John Adams, but that doesn't get you very far these days. So we've got the Blood Center, the life science hub they're talking about. As I look at it, it's really a life science hub. If it was just to get a big building that violated long-standing mid-block zoning, I have to be honest, I wouldn't be this angry. But this project isn't just wrong, it is evil. It would put an important neighborhood playground largely in shadows in critical hours when it's most used by families in this community. And worse than that, it would put 6 schools across the street, including 1 school for autistic children, in permanent shadows. And that simply is not acceptable.
My name is Erica Doyle. I'm the principal of Vanguard High School, which is in the Julia Richmond complex. I come to the issue of sunlight. This building will deprive children in our schools and children in our neighborhood of the sunlight that we all so desperately need and that children must have.
This is Joshua Satin. I'm the principal of the Ella Baker School, and I'm building manager at the Julia Richmond complex. On behalf of all of the principals and the people over at the Julia Richmond building, we're a 3-month to high school to 12th grade building with a District 75 school, a school with middle schoolers with autism. Just putting that shadow there, not allowing sunlight. Those rooms are for District 75 schools, so right there we would put a lot of kids in District 75 in the dark.
My name is Adam Drumbach. I'm also with the Julia Richmond Education Complex. I'm a teacher there and I was a principal there. Speak to the issue of sunlight in the Julia Richmond building as someone who...
Could you sum up, please, Marty?
The building across the street would deprive the Julia Richmond complex of all of its light for its entire day, and it would be sort of the gloom of darkness cast upon it.
Our school bus fleet takes our precious school children to school. We see them all.
Marty, could you sum up, please?
Yeah, right now. Mayor de Blasio, I'm calling you out. Precious school children, huh? Well, you want to talk the talk? It's time you walk the walk. Don't you dare put this bright, sunny school in perpetual darkness. How dare you? How dare you? Thank you. Anthony?
Yes. Or Elizabeth, well, we should ask people to queue up for members of the public to queue up to speak.
How many members of the public do we have speaking, Max?
Right now, we just have 1.
Oh, great.
1 hand up, yes. Oh, now 2.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, here they come. Oh.
That's all right, Max.
And Anthony, you want a 2-minute timer?
Yeah, let's do a timer. Elizabeth, do you want to call on them or you want me to?
I don't mind. I don't see a list. Oh, there. People. Who was the first one to sign up?
Linda, I believe, was the first one I saw.
Okay. Sign. Unmute them.
Sure. Go ahead, Linda.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'll be quick. First, I hope that Marty Bell will submit a hard copy of that excellent presentation to every member of the City Council. A hard copy. Let them have that in front of them. The factor that hasn't been mentioned about the school, although it was hard to hear some of the reproduced sound, is the noise factor. 4 years of noise. Somebody's entire high school education where they won't be able to think or learn or speak in the school. And somebody mentioned something else. Tenants are going to be displaced. There is no way to live immediately next to a building that's going to be lit for 24 hours a day, and the noise from it and the danger of pathogens leaking. And I wonder if Mr. Longfellow wants to compensate tenants who are forced to move for the cost of their move. That's it.
Thank you very much. The next customer, please.
The next customer will
And
be...
could you announce your name so that goes on the record?
I imagine he will announce his name, but I believe it's the council member.
Oh, is he here?
Yes. Thank you.
Oh,
good evening.
Do you want to speak?
Start with yeah, sure. I want to start with a good evening to everyone. I'm Council Member Ben Kalos. I want to thank our co-chair Elizabeth Ashby and Anthony Cohn for having me tonight and all the great work of the Zoning Committee on addressing the blood center proposal. In most cases, anywhere else in New York City on any other community board, this would be the first time anyone heard about what was going on with the blood center. But thanks to Community Board 8, our chair, Russell Squire, and Alita Camp before him, the current zoning committee chairs, the previous zoning committee chair, Lane Walsh, we've been on top of this for quite some time. We were quick to make sure the community knew about this, as was Gail Brewer, our borough president, and State Senator Liz Kruger. For those of you keeping score, this, I believe, I only knew about the twice when I served on Community Board 8 that the community spoke out and defeated the project under then Councilmember Jessica Lappin. Since then, I've been advised by Elizabeth Rose that this actually happened in 1984 when I was 3 years old. And nothing came of it then either. And I want to thank, I see 180 participants who are here tonight, so thank you. In a lot of situations, I think developers rely on the community not coming out, and we want the community out here. We want you to be heard. One thing that is incredibly important to me is that the community board gets 60 days to hear this, and I want the community board to take the full 60 days so that everyone in the community has an opportunity to weigh in. One of the biggest concerns, in addition to, and to amplify a handful from what Mr. Bell has so eloquently stated, is the fact that the Longfellow commercial tower will cast a shadow for many of the hours that there are, that anyone would be using the playground for many hours of the day throughout most of the year. And I still haven't seen a proposal for how it could possibly ever be mitigated. And so that is something that still remains unaddressed. And I'll just say that I have a 3-year-old daughter. I'm biased. I need playgrounds to go to. She gets bored of playgrounds. And when the playground is in shadow, that's when she turns to me and says, "Dada, time to go." And whether it's going to a playground with sunlight or just going home and being trapped inside a small apartment with a 3-year-old with way too much energy. And we don't have very many playgrounds in the neighborhood. We don't have many places where you can see the sun, and no one wants to sit in the dark. I think the other big question that needs to be answered is, it seems that the as of right development could accommodate the blood center's needs. And I don't know that we've seen a proposal for what programmatic needs the Longfellow Tower would solve, and whether or not it is just there to print money. And a larger question is zoning just here for us to print money for people? Or is it supposed to serve a purpose, like being used to build schools or affordable housing, as we did with mandatory inclusionary housing? A specific concern about this is we're converting this block. So literally, starting at 59th Street, we have a commercial business district 8 blocks away. And there's thousands of empty square footage, I've been told millions. And we have elected officials who are saying that that should be converted into residential neighborhoods. And at the same time, we now have a proposal that seeks to convert a residential neighborhood into a commercial neighborhood. And it's hard for me to understand why we would be flipping our zoning. And it seems to be very site specific. That's part of why spot zonings are illegal. And I don't know why we wouldn't want to drive people into our commercial business districts and make sure that we do keep the commercial neighborhoods and the residential neighborhoods separate and apart. The blood center and the other hospitals in the neighborhood have been here because under the zoning, we want doctors' offices, we want hospitals in every community, and so we want to have them, and so the blood center is able to be there as that. But you're being asked to consider, should these 2 blocks be rezoned from residential to commercial? And along those lines, we learned about a biosafety level 3 lab. This is a lab where they are dealing with things that are more dangerous than Ebola or coronavirus, the one that we're currently dealing with, which already shut down our planet. And so we've been advised that this already exists at the blood center. But right now, if the blood center were to leave, another nonprofit, another university would have to come in. Converting this to a commercial space means that anyone can come in, whether it's a pharmaceutical company, or I don't know what the standards are for anyone who wants to go in. Maybe a random person can go in and rent the space and begin BSL 3. And this is a question that Friends of the Upper East Side Historic District asked. It's a question I've asked, and we have not heard an answer on whether or not the BSL 3 is tied to the blood center as a tenant in this new commercial building. If all the tenants in the building can use it, if when the blood center sells the building for even more money, whether or not they'll do it. Also, whether or not that there's something the city has called a deed restriction. A lot of pros probably heard about it with the Rivington scandal, where the city removed a deed restriction worth $100 million and got paid very little for it, at the same time as lobbyists made quite a lot. And so one of the questions is there a deed restriction on this that says this can only be used by the blood center? So there are a lot of questions that remain unanswered. We also heard a lot about the residents and also the school across the street. We have a school across the street with students who are receiving a special education. Some of them have, I believe, autism and on the spectrum. And the question is, how will these children learn? What is the impact on that? I will tell you that we've done research in our office and found that natural light is pretty good for kids. It's also good for the environment. And right now, the children at Julie Richmond Education Complex have immense amounts of natural light in their cafeteria and elsewhere. And if this was built as of right, they'd be fine. But a big question there is what will happen to the children at the school? What will happen to them in the playgrounds? And there's a lot of questions that remain unanswered. and should have been included in the environmental impact statement, and I still haven't heard answers to. So I'd like to see all of those answered. I'd like the full 60 days for the community to be heard. I know that some of you may be frustrated that 180 or 300 of you are going to have to come out again in May and again in June, but it's part of the process, and it makes sure that everyone gets to hear their voice and that we go through the proper process. I want to hear where the community board is on this, and I want to hear from you. You can email me at bkalos@benkalos.com, and we still have a survey up at benkalos.com/petition/blood center. I'm eager to learn where folks are on this project and how much support there is or isn't for this project in the community. So far, we've only heard from about 402 people, and an immense number have expressed opposition, but we still need to hear from many, many more. So I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out today. I now see we're up to 181. I see a lot of hands raised. Please keep coming out. Please know that I am listening. Please know that even after the community board votes at the end of June, hopefully, this is still going to have to go to the borough president. I'm going to encourage the borough president to have a hearing on it, and we're going to ask folks to come out in July or August for that. And then it's going to come to the council, where we're going to need you to come out for that too. This is not the first time that this project has been proposed, and you need to make your voices heard. And please keep coming out, because we're listening. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Ben. And the next speaker, and what we've asked is that if somebody has made your point, recognize it with, in the little way that Max has described, as opposed to repeating it. So, okay, Max, I don't have a list here.
Well, then do you want me to do it, Elizabeth? I can do it. I can call on people.
Can you see them?
Oh, yeah, I can see them.
I can see, but I don't know what order they signed up in. So is that a list?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Anthony. I can't find them.
All righty. So next we have Bill Angelos.
All right.
If we can find
I
him.
found you. Go ahead, Bill.
Bill, you're going to have to unmute.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. My name is Bill Angelos. I'm the board member of 301 East 66th Street. I'm also one of the founders of East Side of Responsible Zoning, our Facebook page. I will put the link in the chat. Anyone's like information on the Facebook. I'd like to discuss Mr. Paul Silver at the last month's meeting stated, at the zoning committee meeting, stated that he and his office reached out to the community to engage regarding the blood center proposed tower. And he stated that he reached out to 301 East 66th Street, that we did not respond. That is false. That is absolutely false. Myself and my fellow board member, Anthony Barrett, did accept the invitation to meet with the blood center, and they gave us a presentation on October 26th at 9 a.m. Mr. Silver was one of the representative and presenter of the presentation. And during the presentation, Mr. Barrett and myself expressed our concerns. We expressed to them the scope, the scale, the height, and the lack of setback of the building. And furthermore, during the presentation, that we did not ask our property to be included in the rezoning. We never asked for it. They never asked us. We did not consent. And we will ask them to withdraw that. So 6 months later, after we expressed our concerns, they still have not get back to us our concerns. So I think it's I'd like to make the correction that Mr. Silver did not give us a truthful statement. He misled to the board and to the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And we'll be running the poll. Oh, here it is. Okay, so if everyone would just do their voting. And our next speaker is Shannon Brakowski. I hope I said that right.
You did, thank you.
Oh, great.
I don't want to reiterate what everybody else has said, and Councilmember Kalos took the words right out of my mouth. Sorry, my name is Shannon Brakowski. I am the co-president of the PTA at PS 183. And I just wanted to come on to say that most parents and families that I've spoken to are really opposed to this project. And I think that the impact that it's having on our kids really should be a focal point. There's a number of schools in the area. The library is also right next to this blood center building, which hasn't been mentioned yet. It's a community street. And again, most parents and families that I speak to are really opposed and against this project. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shannon. Andrew Ravishir.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. And I'm speaking out against this proposed luxury real estate land grab because the inevitable climate change and medical harm that this project will bring about, as well as the disastrous zoning standard that it will set throughout the city. As many of you know, I've been a vociferous advocate for the 210-foot height cap. I've discussed that studies around the world, particularly in China and London, who are ahead of us on the overdevelopment curve, have demonstrated that buildings emit an exponentially greater amount of greenhouse gas emissions and use an exponentially greater amount of energy after 100 feet, or 10 stories, and 210 feet after 21 stories. This increase in turn warms our city by trapping energy in the atmosphere, worsens our air quality through the trapping of particulate matter, and exacerbates the urban heat island effect. The urban heat island effect can be defined as the propensity of cities to trap heat and grow considerably warmer than the surrounding natural environment. It can change temperatures up to 10 degrees Fahrenheit. While it may just sound like a mere inconvenience to live in a warmer city, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority recognizes the greater danger that this temperature jump would bring about with regards to rising asthma, cardiovascular, mental illness, and infectious disease rates. This development would contribute to these environmental issues our city faces. New York has a monumental task ahead to rebuild the city in a way that protects the viability, health, and environment, both today and for generations to come. We need our future infrastructure to support public health and combat climate change. If this project in its current form goes through, it will set a new standard for other luxury real estate firms to capitalize on distressed assets throughout the city, only perpetuating the economic disconnect between working class residents and voyeuristic financiers in all 5 boroughs, all in the name of supposed service to communities. This project must not go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Great. I just wanted to amplify a couple of things that Ben brought up, in particular the issue of that Ben and actually Bill Angelos brought up, having to do with rezoning of the Second Avenue portion. And when asked about that, and probably way back in November, Paul Selver told us that that was not something they asked for, but something that was proposed by city planning. And what that says to us is, in fact, city planning was trying to find a way to push the project forward so it would not appear to be spot zoning. Although if you think about it a little bit, it's really like spot zoning twice. And then the other thing is about the BSL-3 lab. The BSL-3 lab was left out of their initial presentation. It came into the second presentation where it was shown as being on the shared floor between the commercial tower and the blood center. And it was only after considerable pushback that Paul Selver said that, yes, even though it was going to be located there, it would be only for the blood center. So I thought I would just bring up those 2 points. And next we have Barbara Singer.
There you go. Go ahead.
Well, thank you so much. I'm very impressed by these scientific reasons not to have this rezoning take place. And it seems to me that there's lack of care for people involved. There's just plain ill will and contempt for children, for the light needed. And this sets a precedent for not only the city, but for the country and for the world. Do we want to have America really care for people? This is a key thing. This is a test thing here. And I think there are so many people who want to care for each other and care for the world, and this is against it. And so I am vehemently against the ill will, the fight between greed and kindness that is involved here. It's a very serious thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Next, we have Micheline, and if you would more fully identify yourself.
The one that says iPad, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. My name is Michelle Laka. I live at 324 East 66th Street. I'm actually directly across the street from the blood center. So this project, and I've been here for many, many years, this project will totally affect me. It will take away my natural light, which I have right now. And that's one of the reasons why I moved in here. And it will bring so much dust, debris, and the disturbance, during the construction that's going to last many years. So I'm totally against this project, which will lower my quality of life. So that's really what I wanted to say. And, we have to also look at the whole picture, because changing these zoning laws will not only affect this street, but it's going to affect the whole city. So we have to really stick to our zoning laws and not allow them to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Wendy McIver. I think that's right. Close enough.
Yep.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, and it was perfect pronunciation, so thank you very much. Zoning has been well established as a constitutional right under the 14th Amendment of the United States, which protects zoning regulations as part of our policing powers. And these policing powers are there to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the community. And they also provide a certain predictability to what residents and workers can expect. The proposal from Longfellow is, you've heard me speak for quite a long time now on environmental issues. The height alone increases the greenhouse gas effect, which is crucial, especially in Manhattan Island, but throughout our 4 islands and 1 peninsula of New York City. And there's no amelioration that can happen other than decreasing the height. Longfellow could be a wonderful partner in providing jobs of all kinds and development if they would even just move a few blocks away and take the first floor space that is available throughout our community because of the loss of retail space, as long as the lab fit in with the health of the community and in the other respects of the nature of the kind of laboratory work they would do. But I wanted to say very quickly, switching hats, I spent almost 2 decades helping parents to secure the rights of their children with developmental disabilities, and especially in the work of autism, which is the predominant, I think, District 75 issue, and especially at that location. You're teaching children with intensity of instruction in a location usually a classroom or a study space, and then you must move it outside. You must move it outside to show that the learning can take place over an environment. 3 + 4 is 7 in a classroom, and 3 + 4 is 7 in the playground, and 3 + 4 is 7 when you're working with a friend and developing social skills and self-care skills and making them as rehabilitated as possible in the community. And for that reason, I oppose this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Josh Satin, please.
Hi, how are you? My name is Joshua Satin. I'm the principal of the Ella Baker School within one of the schools within the Julia Richmond building. Just reiterating what Marty was saying, what Ben was saying, what Shannon was saying, and everybody else, that sunlight matters. It is a part of, it keeps us awake. It keeps us learning. The noise was mentioned, the pollution was mentioned, the pollution at the moment, and then I believe one of the gentlemen was talking about pollution for years to come. The Julia Richmond building, the families, the principals, we all oppose this this project, and coming time and time again to each of these meetings, it sounds like we're following along with what the neighborhood wants as well. It will devastate the park. It'll devastate the community. And the Ella Baker School is a sanctuary, the Ella Baker School, but also all the other 6 schools are a sanctuary. Kids come from all over the city to the Julia Richmond building to learn and grow, to science and arts and build community. And this would just ruin that. Not to mention all of the congestion on the street, over 2,000 more people coming to the block, as they said in one of their meetings. This is just not something that the neighborhood wants nor needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And next we have Barbara Dolgen. Close enough.
Oh, yep. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
There you are.
Yeah. So it's not really Barbara Dolgen, it's Hannah Gaffney, but it's the same household. And we are at 333 East 66th Street. And basically, I just want to reinforce the fact that the impact on 66 is as severe as it is on 67, because I continuously hear about what impact it's going to have on 67th Street. And in addition, I want to point out that construction, if they tell you 4 years, 99% of the time, it's not 4 years, it's a lot more than that. It's going to basically make a mess of our lives on this block. So I want to make sure that this sort of is taken into consideration, and it's a part of any presentation that goes out there. 66th Street is as important as 67, and that's my point.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And now we have Elizabeth Pugh.
Elizabeth, you have to click to confirm unmuting.
Sorry, thank you. Good evening. I'm speaking on behalf of the Friends of St. Catherine's Park Board. We prepared a statement of our concerns to share with you. We look forward to, after this, hearing back from the Blood Center and Longfellow as to how they'll address the concerns that we've raised. All of these concerns were voted on with our board and are a good reflection of our issues. So to start, increased park usage. The board expects a significant increase of visitors to the park given the approximate 2,000 additional workers that the new building will house. So the need for a second parks worker to maintain our park will be necessary to continue keeping it in its current standard. This includes rubbish pickup throughout the park, garbage bin maintenance, bathroom cleaning, maintenance, and pest control. The board voted unanimously that this is a significant concern that will impact all visitors' experience at the park. With regards to shadow studies, the results of the shadow study showed that during June, July, and August, parts of the park will be in some shadow from 2:30 to 6 p.m. We received feedback from parents that this will detract from their children's experience playing at the park. On the other hand, our organization knows from years of hosting events during that same time, those same months, such as toddler concerts, puppet shows, and toddler yoga, that we struggle to set these events up in the shadiest parts of the park to keep people cool and out of direct sunlight. As the shadows relate to the garden beds and plantings, our gardening team has confirmed any shadows cast during this time will not be problematic for our plantings. The shadow study also states that there's a six-hour period of direct sunlight year-round, which also does not impact our horticulture in any meaningful way. The board voted on this concern and was equally split, with half of us voting that this is a concern and half voting that it is not. I have one more item.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, the last one was regarding light pollution. While the shadow study was conducted for the daytime, we did not hear how the new building plans to manage light pollution in the evening. During the summer months, the park is open later in the evening, and we think the new building will drench the park with artificial light from the internal and external areas of the building during the hours when the park is still open. The board voted on this concern, was also equally split, half thinking this was a major issue, half thinking it was not, but we very much look forward to hearing how the developers are proposing managing artificial light in the evening through window shades or timed lights or whatever it might be. So those are the major concerns for Friends of St. Catherine's Park as it relates to the New York Blood Center's building and our park itself. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have, let's see. Next, we have John S. So, and if you would fully identify yourself, that would be useful when we find you.
Yes, I'm terribly sorry. I didn't realize my name said John S. It's John Salony, and I'll spell it out when we're done here. Thank you, Anthony. A couple of quick questions or things that I think would be of value to the community board. And that is, what would the height of the building be if we eliminated the shadow, if the sky exposure plane was not going to be a factor? Because it is significant. It's a long shadow, and 2 p.m. to 6 is significant in the summer, and it's significant all year long. So I would like to know, how tall can the building be to eliminate the problem that we relate to there? And then regarding BSL 3, I've been living in New York most of my life. I've been Upper East Sider for 50 years. I live at 140 East 83rd Street, and I'm a boater. And we have a sailboat, and I sail in and about Long Island. And years ago, I discovered that Plum Island is owned by the United States, by the federal government. And it has been for many, many years the home of research for animal communicable diseases. Now, Plum Island, if anyone wants to look on a map, is very remote, way out on the eastern tip of Long Island, beyond the North Fork. So my question is, what other places are there for locations for BSL 3 that we can look at and point to and say to the owners of the building, Longfellow Group, why don't you locate in that spot? You know, we do know that the federal government has picked a very remote location for animal studies. So why can't it be here? Why can't that be looked at as well? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Stephen Smith.
Stephen, you'll have to, oh, there you go.
Here we go. Okay. I am at 333 East 66th Street. I am a former involved in construction in New York City. And one of the rhetorical questions that Marty Bell asked was regarding why are they building here, or why do they want this building? And to me, it just seems that it is a grab for air rights that they're not entitled to, and to monetize on that. Another question that Marty asked rhetorically is why they had an attorney and a public relations person doing their representation, which, by the way, I'm a little disturbed that while they always present that they want to hear from the community, they rejected our request, our community board's request, to come tonight and listen to our community. But I have been seeing in the media that the law firm that is representing Longfellow and New York Blood Center also represented Mayor de Blasio a while back with some ethics questions that the mayor was involved with. I've also read that there's about $300,000 in unpaid legal bills. And I'm just wondering, rhetorically, I imagine, whether or not that this is a conflict of interest, and whether or not we're getting into the area of ethics again with the mayor's enthusiastic support of this program and disregarding his past promises to the community and certainly to the students.
Thank you, Steve. That was a good point. Next we have, oops, did Rachel put her hand down? Yes, it looks like Rachel put her hand down. So we have Maggie Lehman. Oh, she just put her hand back up. All right.
I don't think Rachel did that on purpose.
Did? Okay. All right. So we have Maggie Lehman.
Oh, I thought you wanted Rachel, because it was not on purpose.
Rachel,
it wasn't
Rachel
on
can
purpose.
take my spot. She'll
Okay.
be
I'm
a lot
sorry.
smarter than I am.
That's all right, Rachel.
I didn't realize I put it down. Okay, sorry.
It's
In
okay.
any case, I'm Rachel Eby, speaking for Friends of the Upper East Side Historic Districts. I joined a little bit late tonight, so I will do my best not to repeat what others have said. I just wanted to make two quick points. One is just to really underscore the impact of the fact that this would be the very first rezoning of an R8B district on the Upper East Side since that zoning was passed 36 years ago. I really think that R8B has been kind of the unsung hero in preserving the mid-blocks of the Upper East Side, and the fact that this would be the very first one, you know, we're not even talking about for affordable housing or something that is, you know, widely acknowledged that we need more of in our city. We're talking about this massive upzoning to support basically commercial office space, which isn't needed, and would threaten every mid-block on the Upper East Side and beyond. The second point that I want to make is just to underscore that the lack of transparency around the lab issue, which was a process concern in terms of the scoping process, has continued. So in the DEIS, which I haven't fully read, but what I've seen so far, is that despite what Paul Selver has said about the labs being for the blood center's use exclusively, the DEIS itself is silent on that fact. And it's unclear whether or not the lab would be available to all of the commercial spaces in the building. So, you know, the lack of transparency just continues, and I'll stop there.
Thank you, Rachel. So now we'll go to Maggie.
Thanks a lot. I want to echo what Marty Bell said, that in that excellent presentation, that there's no rationale at all for this commercial building. As Marty's presentation pointed out, the only rationale offered, the proximity, was an artificial and manufactured one, and Marty easily debunked that. I want to express appreciation to Ben from all of us for
raising the substantive questions that we need answers on, and that city planning should have addressed in the DEIS and then at the certification, where it raised not one of the obvious questions. I want to respectfully, with all due respect, challenge Elizabeth Dew's comments, the various items that the Board of Friends of St. Catherine's Park voted on, such as an extra park worker to clean up. This neighborhood is burning. It's literally will be burning with climate change heat, with the enhanced, increased ventilation systems, exhaust fans that life science experimental labs require. This neighborhood is facing a mammoth bonfire, and Friends of St. Catherine's Park Board are addressing pickup and rodent control. And the shadow study presented by Kramer Levin, which was an average of shadows based on the solstice. It too was an artificial shadow study, which begs the question, why should there be any tower that takes away any shadow? And I want to talk about the...
Thank you, Maggie. Next, we have Laura Newman.
Laura, if you're there, you'll have to.
Yeah, I'm here. I was just doing a submission. Hi, I'm a parent of a high school student at Urban Academy Laboratory High School in the Julia Richmond complex. And I'm so impressed with things that that people were saying. The only thing I feel like I can add is that aside from the traffic creating a terrible environmental hazard, it creates a terrible traffic safety hazard. I've been involved with a lot of Families for Safe Streets actions, children who unfortunately have been killed, sometimes going to school, sometimes with a parent or a grandparent. And I'm also somebody who rides my bike across both 66th Street and 67th Street very often on my commute to work. And on 66th Street, I personally was doored by a blood center card delivery thing. And I rode down 67th Street today, and the amount of congestion there was terrible with school buses, which are necessary, tons of cars. And then I noticed a huge touring bus that takes that route. And I just hate to think that little children who attend that school, and children with disabilities and disabled adults who are walking around, that as a psychologist, I work with disabled adults. I just think it'll be devastating in terms of safety in crossing the streets, in addition to the environmental impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
We have Martin Edelman.
Thank you, everyone, for organizing this important meeting. I'm Marty Edelman. I live at 333 East 66th Street with my wife for 47 years, and I'm a former board member at 333 East 66th Street. Mid-block zoning laws have done us well, and they're there for good reason. How much more clear objection to this project is enough to kill this project and stop wasting our time? Memorial Sloan Kettering has been a good neighbor in our neighborhood by building mid-block facilities on East 64th Street and East 65th Street 5 stories high. These have been built within the last 5 years. And that's what a good neighbor, the Blood Center, should be doing. 5-story high building in their existing place, and let's get on with our life. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, I'm going to I see we have a couple of board members here, so I'm going to skip them and come back to them. So let's, we have Betty Wallerstein somewhere on the phone.
Go ahead, Betty. *6 to unmute.
Thank you very much. Martin Bell did a fabulous presentation, and I hope that that material, Martin, will be available in many different areas. But I'm disappointed that only 2 or 3 people talked about the zoning. It's extremely important. The mid-block zoning was hard to come by, but we got it. And we are not going to lose it because it doesn't look like we're going to do so very well on the large blocks, the avenues. But we should not do anything that will eliminate the ability to keep the mid-block zoning. The other thing is that what Martin was able to show is the dishonesty that was coming from a friend. The Blood Center has always been a very good friend in the community. They were wonderful with the community board, always arranging to let them have meetings there. When I was on the board too long ago, we could always meet there. We saw them as a friend. They're no longer a friend. And the other thing is that we should not really be talking about Longfellow and where else they could go to get whatever the towers they want. We have already heard that we don't need the tower. That the Blood Center can add to what they want to add to, can still keep within the zoning. If they have to add a couple more floors, they can still do it. They don't want to pay for it. They want to find someone who's going to pay for it. Well, we don't have we don't owe Longfellow any kind of offering to do anything. Now, as far as the schools and the park, that's all very important. But it's mostly important that we keep the zoning. It's urgent.
Thank you, Betty. We next have Lynn Vera.
I see. Go ahead, Lynn.
Great. Thanks.
Hi. I did step away for a moment, so I'm hoping I'm not repeating anyone. Something that I haven't heard yet is, despite the fact that we're coming out of a pandemic, plenty of office space is going to be available in the city. It's out there. Businesses, I'm a business person, and companies are not going to come back in the same way. We've all proven we can work remotely, and a lot of businesses are giving up their office space or reducing their office space. So there is plenty of other opportunities. Somebody does not have to come in and build and ruin our zoning, ruin our neighborhood, ruin the traffic on 2nd Avenue and the side streets. It's unnecessary. It's a complete waste.
Thank you. Can I do that? Yes. And now we have Anthony Barrett.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I was actually going to talk solely on traffic, but I'm going to rush through it quickly and say that I find it incredulous and unbelievable that the so-called Friends of St. Catherine's Park would be divided, 50-50 split as to whether shadows would be desirable for 6 hours in the afternoon for most of the year so they could host their puppet shows in the shade. Just ask them, how many times in the last year have they hosted a puppet show? I've never seen that there. Getting back to my original point on traffic, I'd like the community board traffic committee to at least put on their agenda at their next meeting the impact that this development would have on traffic, as the EIS really minimizes the effect of traffic. And I think it might be important for the community to get a different perspective in that area. And thirdly, again, coming back to zoning, the Blood Center and Longfellow incorporated our site. I represent 301 East 66th Street. I'm on the board of that building. And our site was included in their rezoning. Basically, they used our site so they could include the movie theaters. So when we met with Paul Selva back in the beginning of November or end of October last year, the first thing he said to us is, the good news is we are going to legalize the movie theaters in the Solo building. I had no idea that that was even an issue. We cannot allow them to manipulate the zoning process in this way. And again, as this is a land use issue, I think it's really important that we get to understand the process and what they really do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anthony. Next, we have Lydia Canizares.
Hi there. I'm Lydia Canizares. I just wanted to add a couple of other points to many of them that were already made. But one thing that I wanted people to realize is that the city had offered 3 alternative sites to Longfellow that were commercially zoned, they were not in residential areas, and they would have welcomed such a life sciences hub, but Longfellow refused them. Also, another point about St. Catherine's Park, I'm part of a task force that's to increase grassroots awareness about the zoning threat. And so our group of volunteers have been distributing flyers and talking to people who are enjoying the park, the families there, and all of the workers of the surrounding businesses and medical centers. And when they were shown the schematics of the amount of shadow that would be cast on the park, they were horrified and immediately asked what they could do to fight this. It seems the city's process doesn't care about the impact of shadows on people, only on plants. And we need to let people know that indeed this is an immense quality of life issue. And that the outrage is so, that's all I wanted to say, and I want to thank everyone else for their points that they so aptly made.
Thank you. Thank you, Lydia. We have, I think, hang on a second. We have 2 more members of the public. Daniel Goldhagen.
Yes, good evening. I live at 333 East 68th Street, and I'd like to make a point. The state has just lost a congressional seat, and it seems to me that the desirability of living in the city and this community are pretty much at stake. People can move away, and I think the de Blasio administration is banking on the life sciences to be a strong tax base when we don't know in 6 years what's going to be there when this building will be completed, if there is a market for this space, and how the loss of people and residents that live in this community will leave, and what kind of tax base loss that the city will incur when they are showing that commercial is more important than residential community. Thank you.
Thank you. Oops, well, we've gained 1 more. Okay, we have 3 more. Andrew Fine is next, wherever he is.
Here I am.
Ah.
I think you hear me.
Yes.
Great. Well, all of us have voiced our opposition to the Blood Center on a variety of reasons, most especially violating the zoning of mid-block and perpetuating that into the future and just basically destroying all mid-blocks in terms of zoning. I was trying to find an adjective that would express my feelings about this project. And some of the, we could do like a ranked choice voting thing here if you'd like, but it'd be an exercise. Outrageous is one word. Outlandish, audacious, ostentatious, obnoxious, but my personal best is egregious, which means outstandingly bad or shocking. And I think to have a mid-block development at 330 feet solely for the purpose of commercial gain is, well, it's obnoxious and it's egregious. And I voice my opposition to it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
We have just two more speakers.
We have someone else actually as well, Anthony, that's having trouble raising their hand, but we can go to them after
the end. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We have Keith Guthus. I'm sure I got that wrong.
Hi. Thanks. Yeah, Keith Guthus. I recently purchased a unit at 301 East 69th. I closed on it 6 weeks ago. So imagine my shock to read the story in the Post this past weekend. You know, as I found out about this over the weekend and you know, did all my research, you know, one quote stood out, and it's from it's from the spokesperson for the NYBC, who said, quote, "Local residents' input is important to us, and we are looking forward to having many more productive conversations with the community board and other stakeholders, such as Friends of St. Catherine's Park." And as one other person said, I think it's absolutely telling that they are not here tonight. They could have been here tonight. They are not here tonight. So many great so many great comments have been made. You know, in Marty's presentation, one thing that really stood out is the artist's rendering of the block of 67th Street, and it's showing 3 wide lanes, and then you see what it actually looks like. Clearly, that street can't support this this building. What's become really clear to me in seeing the actions both now of the New York Blood Center and Longfellow is they're either blatantly incompetent or they're just outright lying. You don't, you know, hide the fact that there's a biosafety level 3 lab there until your next presentation. You either don't have any, you know, control over your own presentation, or you're really trying to sneak it through. And so I think in terms of somebody that the community wants to be in business with, and I think from what's been said, the New York Blood Center has been a really good member of the community for a long time. Clearly something has changed, and clearly Longfellow, you know, it's an out-of-town developer looking to destroy the neighborhood. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have someone here named PS.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hello,
Please
can you hear me?
identify yourself. Yes.
Yeah, my name is Philip Saliger. That's what the PS stands for. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I wanted to mention, in terms of the shadow analysis, the difference between St. Catherine and the neighboring ball court. And I'm not sure if the ball court is included as part of the St. Catherine analysis or not. And what the percentages of like the plants and the trees being involved in this seems to me, in terms of times, to pertain more to the park with the benches and the playground, and not so much on the ball court, which, just knowing from the location of it, would seem to have to be in the shade of, you know, I think they belong to the school. And I'm wondering where the shadow analysis really draws the line for St. Catherine Park, and whether the neighboring like flat surface is included in that shadow analysis or not, because that's a big resource for the entire kids in the neighborhood. I can tell you, all afternoon until late evening hours.
Very good.
That's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. let's see, oops, lost it. We've got a Ms. Dean, who is a JREC parent, and then we have Paul Graziano.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to participate. I participated in one of your meetings a couple of months back. I'd like to know, as a parent and a family member of multiple people that participate and utilize the JREC campus, what it is that I can do. Because, you know, I echo all of the sentiments. It's egregious, outlandish, outrageous. And we're talking about shadows and lab studies, oh my. But the hardest hit will be our seniors and our children in that community. And rather than echo everyone else's sentiments and go against what I was asked to do, which is not repeat, I'd like to know, besides participating and reiterating and echoing sentiments previously stated, what it is that I can do and that I can ask other parents and loved ones of participants and staff of that building to do to support the surrounding community in opposition to this, you know, hazardous expansion that's going to take place.
Thank you. Maybe if you give your contact information to Will, put it, yes, Will is raising his thumbs. We'll be able to connect you with the various community organizations that are set up for this. How's that?
Thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome. And then, of course, as Assemblyperson Kalos said, show up in May, show up in June, and show up at the City Council. And also if the borough president has an actual meeting on the subject. And then we have Paul Graziano, and that is the end of the public, I think, end of the public comments, and then we'll go to the board.
You have one more after Paul.
Oh, okay.
Her name's Susan Collins, I believe.
Okay, but Paul?
Thank you. Thanks for hearing me tonight. Paul Graziano, I'm a planner and I'm representing, I'm representing 301 East 66 as their planner. I've spoken a number of times before on this. I just want to remind the board, you know, as we're going through the DEIS and all of this process, there are exactly 3 properties that are being considered for rezoning in this application. And our property, 301 East 66, is one of those 3 properties. This property was not consulted. It was not advised. It was not given any heads up. It was just included in this rezoning to help the blood center. They are the only ones who are gaining any kind of benefit. There is no public benefit. There's no benefit to the building 301 East 66. Obviously, it will be a great detriment to their building, obviously to the neighborhood. I don't have to respond to that as it's been said so many times. But I just want to, you know, put this out there. This is literally a hostile taking. This is what we would describe as a taking in land use terms. And to allow this to occur is, rarely have I seen something as egregious as this. And the way that this has been structured, as many of you know, is we're going to help this property across the street legalize their movie theater. Well, 301 East 66 is literally the meat in the proverbial sandwich, right? So this building is going to be impacted severely. Obviously, the neighborhood will be, but being the adjacent building that is unwillingly part of this rezoning puts us in a very unique perspective. And I just wanted to remind the board and the public about this. And this is something that the board is going to have to decide if this goes through, whether there's going to be litigation on this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. And then,
we have one more. She's unable to raise her hand, so we have to look for her. I believe her name is Susan Cooper Collins.
Collins?
Cooper,
Okay.
Susan Cooper, I think.
Cooper, she's unmuted. Go ahead, Susan.
Hi. First of all, I would like to thank Marty Bell, and I would ask him please to post his presentation to the Facebook site Eastsiders for Responsible Zoning.
I would also like to suggest that we put into that Facebook site what we can do as individuals that was requested earlier by another speaker. The other thing that I'm concerned about is, has anyone seen a rendering of what the 66th Street side of this building is going to look like? This is where all the trailer trucks containing all of the gases and all kinds of things are going to be delivering. It's also where all the garbage trucks, and we know when they arrive, are going to be picking up all of this wonderful garbage that is going to be created by the labs in this building. The trailer across the street from the building are, and on either side of the building on 66th Street are residences. There's a group of nuns who live across the street. There are elderly people, there are children. And for 4.5 years, the people who reside on 66th Street are going to be in a real mess. And then once the building is done, these trailer trucks, the garbage trucks, all the rest of it that's going to happen on 66th Street is horrific. And nobody seems to be talking about that. I think we need to focus on that. And again, I would like to direct people to the Eastsiders for Responsible Zoning, which is the Facebook page that we could use to really gear up ideas about what we can really do other than complain to make this project fall apart. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
It looks like we have now in the, I was too overly optimistic as usual. We have someone who is identified as iPad 41 and then Allison Bell.
So I think I may be iPad 41, maybe.
Yes.
And I would put my hand down, but I don't know how. My question is going to be, I listened to all these things.
Do you have a name?
Virginia Gerst, 315 East 68. It
Thank
is so
you.
obvious to me that this is a horrible, stupid idea. What can I really do? Do I go picket? Can I write a letter to somebody? I love what you all are doing, what we all are doing, but it seems to me that let's take some more, aggressive action. I read about people marching on things. That's all I was saying. Is there somebody we could write letters to directly? Should I go throw blocks at de Blasio's house? What can we do to really express our concern on this? And thank you, Susan, for the Eastsiders for Responsible Zoning. I would have put my hand down, but I couldn't figure out how to do it.
Okay, thank you so much. Allison Bell, and then we're going to go to the board members, the committee.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to make one quick point. I also work with Lydia going into the park to speak to the people that are using it. And I also have a question for the Friends of St. Catherine's Park. I have reached out to them numerous times to offer my help, to volunteer, to be a part of whatever they're planning to do in the park. I have never gotten a call back. And I have a question as to why they are on the New York Blood Center's website as being in favor of this project when they're now stating they're divided. And I just wonder if they really want to listen to the people that use the park rather than their board that is split vote. They should really go out and listen to the people that use the park. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Okay, we now have passed two board members and the extremely patient Elaine Walsh. Let's try not, we will try, let's be good people and try not to insist on timers, noting that it is already 8 o'clock. Okay, Elaine.
Okay. Yes.
Set the
thank
tone.
you. I'm going to be brief because people have made the point. I've made the point over time. I want to comment on Elizabeth Dew, who's the president of St. Catherine's Park. Indeed, the community has tried to reach out to her or other board members. I too tried, sent emails, never got a response. So I spoke to the leadership at the Parks Department, and they have informed me and told me I can say this tonight, that St. Catherine's Park does not play a role in any negotiating with Longfellow. It is the Parks Department that will review and look at what is going on. Whether they, now this is my comment, whether they take a stand or not, we need to know that the mayor is their boss. And you know what happened with the Department of Education telling the school to back off. So all I can say is that we will have to continue to reach out to the Parks Department. I'm glad that there are some people on St. Catherine's that could look and be a little honest on some of the issues. What I found of most interest as a nonprofit that brings auxiliary services to the park, that they are asking the park to provide them with a second staff person. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. We now have Rita Popper, also extremely patient.
I'm going to be very brief. I think this whole thing is about zoning, and zoning is a law. And my other comment is I think Marty Bell should run for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Just one quick thing about zoning and also the R8B. One of the reasons that the R8B zoning is so critical and that zoning is so critical is that absent making all of Manhattan a landmark district, zoning is the only way to protect existing neighborhoods and neighborhood character. And it's wrong to rely on landmarking as zoning. Zoning is the vehicle whereby we protect our neighborhoods. Anyway, that was just something I've been bugged about for 40 years. Next, we have Michelle Birnbaum.
Thank you, Anthony. Yes, zoning is what it's all about. Zoning is the only thing that prevents this city from absolute chaos. That is the thrust of this. That's what we should stress. I too was very, well, first let me say congratulations to Marty Bell. He did a fabulous job. I hope he and others can make sure that that presentation goes in front of whoever needs to see it, including the entire city council. I'm also very, very disappointed in the board at St. Catherine's Park. Referring to Elaine's remarks, I think we should probably discount anything they have to say. We have reached out to them before from meeting number one, and they have never showed up to any of our meetings. This is a little late to come to the game. I, for one, would like to see a list of the board of directors of the park, if that's the kind of organization with whom that information should be public. I'll request tonight that they please send that information to the community board. The other thing is, who will investigate the conflict of interest that Steve Smith mentioned? If in fact that's really an issue, I would like to know how to proceed with that, in that there are campaign funds or that there's monies due from the de Blasio campaign, and there's a lawyer who's working in both situations. I don't know how to pursue that, but it's worth mentioning. It was mentioned, and it's worth finding a way to pursue that, because that's actually very key. The other thing is with St. Catherine's Park, it's interesting to me that their main issue wouldn't be the additional 2,000 people who would be using the park, but that they think they need one person to help with cleanup. And those 2,000 people will be all adults. And they'll basically be in there having their lunch at approximately the same time that the schools will be there, and some kind of mid-break. So it's very disappointing to me that they're not concerned about that. All in all, I'm disappointed in St. Catherine's Park. I want to know about the board. I'm talking about follow-up now. I want to see that connection investigated, and I want us to know how we're going to go forward here. What is the actual plan? Because I'm really not adverse to a rally, a sidewalk rally, a peaceful protest in front of whatever facility we think is best. The mayor, downtown at City Hall, the blood center premises, but I think maybe we should start to make our voices heard in a very loud way, peaceful way, but loud. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Next is Marco Tamayo, who is somewhere.
Thank you, Anthony. The Blood Center Administration has been a good friend of ours, and we used to have our meetings in the building. However, the Blood Center team is not present today, and that shows the lack of engagement with our community. I am strongly supporting the Blood Center building to replace its obsolete building with a new state-of-the-art building to continue with its great humanitarian missions. However, I am strongly opposing to build commercial/industrial laboratory type 3 building in our contextual residential RAB district, because it will create a precedent to eliminate our contextual residential district. The laboratories can be located in any part of the city, as we heard from Mr. Bell. As I said before, we can't afford to lose our sunlight, negotiate our fresh air, or surrender our skyline in the mid-block RAB contextual district. The existing 75 feet of the mid-block buildings has a good proportion and relationship between the width of our narrow streets and the building facade heights, so we can have enough sunlight. In the mid-block, in the middle of our RAB residential district, we can't allow to build commercial industrial laboratory type big building. This is extremely problematic. If there is a human error in controlling the maximum hazard of particles allowed to exhaust, we are putting our entire community in harm's way. That is scary. Having our unique skyline, tall buildings facing each other on the wide avenues and on the mid-block 75 feet heights, these allow us to have light, ventilation, and proportion, which are fundamental elements for a vibrant community. These are unique characteristics of the Upper East Side that we must preserve, and we can't allow to lose them. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, Marco. Next, we have Alita and then Ed Hartzell. Alita, where are you?
Thanks, Anthony. Okay, a few things, just so that people know what the attitude, I know you will know already, but the attitude of the City Planning Commission is the BSL-3 lab was not in the scoping document, so the public had no way of knowing what was going on. A lawyer for the opposition, or for some folks involved in the opposition, wrote to City Planning before certification and asked that they delay certification because the BSL-3 lab, which potentially has, quote, catastrophic consequences, and that's a quote from the Department of Health, is so significant. The City Planning Commission didn't even respond to the letter, from what I understand. In addition, Marissa Lago, the head of City Planning, said that, well, zoning is fluid. There have been over 2,000 changes to the zoning resolution since it's been enacted, so they clearly don't see zoning the way we do. Zoning is critical here, but nonetheless, we have to fight this on many grounds, as people have mentioned. I just want to raise that my understanding is that unions have been very much in favor of this particular project and have been lobbying hard city council members. My understanding is that Longfellow signed a project labor agreement for this site only, which is why the unions are so supporting it. They are not necessarily a union shop because they won't agree that no matter where they might end up in the city, there's going to be a union deal. So of course the unions want the jobs here because they're union jobs, but Longfellow, in getting them to do their work of lobbying the city council and in only signing a labor agreement for the East 67th Street site, is being deceitful and manipulative, and the public is again unaware of this. Paul Selver mentioned that they would be here today at the last zoning meeting. They're not here. There is no good faith. There is no line that they're not willing to cross. In addition, please remember that the loading bays and taking away, it's not just during construction, but it's also all of the hazardous materials that they're using that are solid are going to be hauled away from 5 or 6 loading bays on East 66th Street. We don't know the size of the trucks. We don't know the mechanism. So that's something for people to be aware of also. And we don't know the financial relationship. They don't have to tell us, but they certainly are not being a good neighbor by not telling us. We don't know the financial relationship between Longfellow and the Blood Center, and could only surmise that the Blood Center is getting a free building and possibly part of the rent from the commercial tenants from Longfellow. And we do need to be very, very concerned about the potential for conversion of the tower to residences or to offices or to something other than lab space, even if they were to build this. And that raises a whole host of other issues. Thanks very much for your time and listening. Okay, thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, Alita. Next, Ed Hartzog, who is somewhere.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you to everyone. My apologies for arriving late, but I've seen Marty Bell's presentation. He is utterly brilliant. I am pleased to be here with my fellow warriors who have been through the battles with me. Rita Popper, I see on my screen, we have so many. We've been through the wars together on so many of these developments, and oh, what a shock for all of us that it involves a health care facility doing something commercial. I will not speak to the zoning issue because I know a lot of smarter people than myself have spoken about that. I will simply speak to the lady's comment when I came on asking, what can we do? Those of you on the board know my background, know my legal practice. I'm going to speak bluntly to paraphrase Harvey Keitel in Pulp Fiction. I speak fast. There is a purpose to it. I do not mean to offend you, but I'm going to be quite frank and quite blunt to my fellow neighbors in this community. It is time, ladies and gentlemen, to, as Hawkeye Pierce used to say, get off our tushies. Michelle Birnbaum is exactly correct. The reason the Blood Center, in one individual's humble opinion, is not here is because, in their opinion, $175,000 to Surrey Kaiser has this in the bag. Those of you who have been through this with me on other things, shall we say 440 East 62, MSK CUNY et al., we all know the drill. It's all juiced in at BSA and city planning. You may need to get vocal. We need to get on our feet, and we need to get engaged. You need to call every single local representative. And when they tell you that they're a state representative or a federal representative, it does not matter. They represent you. You need to ask them where they stand and what they are doing about it. There are candidates running for city council. The question I have is, who is here and what do they say? Where are they? When you see them on the street, what are they doing? What are you doing? Get engaged. It is a simple message. I know it seems obvious, but sometimes it's lost because on the Upper East Side, they figure we're very well educated. Oh, but it's very polite. We play Marquess of Queensberry and we go to court and we do all these things. I'm sorry. We need to be much more aggressive in letting our feelings be known about this project and the things that are either good or bad about it. That's all I have to say and can offer. Everyone else is a lot smarter than myself in terms of messaging. That from an individual who's in the wars, in the streets, watching people win outside of this borough and this particular community board on projects like this, just passing along some lessons learned. It's great to see everyone. Glad I could make it. Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you, Ed. Next, we have Billy Freeland.
I first want to thank Marty Bell for a terrific presentation. I wasn't going to say this, and I don't know if it's appropriate for me to, but just in response to Ed's comment, I think anyone who serves on a community board and happens to be running for office has an ethical obligation to separate the two roles. And I just want to be very clear about that since I'm following Ed's comment immediately. I want to offer 3 thoughts based on what we've heard tonight. One is I agree with Betty Cooper-Wallerstein and others who have talked about the implications on zoning, but this is zoning for dollars. And I'll repeat again, the Blood Center has gone through a surge of mergers and acquisitions in the last several years. Delaware, Rhode Island, Kansas, Minnesota, I think was the most recent one I saw. They're deep-pocketed. And they're asking the city to give them money out of thin air by going from their current height restrictions to up to 334 feet. And I think, to me, that is what's at issue here. It's why would we condone that? I think it's a form of corporate welfare. Why would we condone that as a city beyond just what it does to the R8B zoning? So I think, for me, that's the biggest thing that bothers me about this entire process and what the Blood Center, what Longfellow is asking us for. I want to make 2 points that go back to our meeting a month ago when I was asking Paul Selver a series of questions, one of which was about their outreach to St. Catherine's Park. I shared the disappointment about how I think opaque Friends of St. Catherine's has been. I have a lot of questions about who their board is and where have they been and what outreach have they gotten from Longfellow and why have they not been before us more often. And frankly, I'm not even sure whether Elizabeth is still at the meeting, and that's disappointing because I would hope Friends of St. Catherine's would continue to engage with us as a board. But again, the question I asked last month is, what outreach has Longfellow done to people who actually frequent the park? I would like them to talk to folks in the park and explain what's happening and actually get their opinions about the implications. And we know from the shadow study from the DEIS, the proposed project would have potentially significant adverse shadows impacts on St. Catherine's Park. So that is now in the DEIS. We know this is happening. And then the last point is Julia Richmond. We're still waiting on answers, a question I asked last month, which is, will Longfellow voluntarily include shadow studies on the impacts that are going to be had on the Julia Richmond Education Complex? We know that it's not required as part of the environmental impact statement, but I nevertheless asked the question again, would they voluntarily, in a gesture of good faith, study the impacts on Julia Richmond, which for reasons that have been stated already, I think would be incredibly important. And so my last point, it's very disappointing that Longfellow and the representatives are not here tonight. Again, if they're insisting that they're going to be a good faith neighbor and actually engage with us on this, then I would really hope that they would attend every one of our meetings. And I think it's important that we as a community insist on that. So I'll just leave it there.
Great. Thank you, Billy. We now have Valerie. And we're getting near the end. Yes. Okay, Valerie, please.
Hi. Couple of things. I think Max has just put up in the chat all the people that everyone who is against this project should be writing to. If you looked at our agenda for this meeting, I want to congratulate Will and his team for putting the entire ULURP timeline on the agenda. People can actually see what this process is all about. It is a very compressed process. No one understands why all of a sudden a process that usually takes more than a year is being pressed and pushed through so that it can be completed before the end of the year. But as Ed said, the Upper East Side is a very smart neighborhood. I think we can all see through what is happening here. This is the payback time for our mayor. He is going to pay back everyone who supported his ill-fated run for the presidency and a bunch of other things. And that is what is happening here. So one thing everyone can do is to write every single council person, because this will come to a vote in the city council, and tell them that you are in favor of maintaining our zoning, our R8B zoning. And they need to hear from every single voter out there that this is what they want. And I'm glad that a lot of people came to the meeting tonight. You can look at this as a dress rehearsal for your participation in our ULURP meetings coming up and at public hearings that you will have to attend. I don't know if the borough president is going to have a meeting, but you should be prepared to go to that. You should be checking out the website of Friends of the Upper East Side Historic District, which will be posting many, when people are talking about organization of demonstrations. There is a steering committee out there. And now that we have times or almost solidified dates for our community board ULURP meetings, there will be organized events that people can participate in outside of the meetings. But most importantly, it's getting your voice heard. This is not a sprint. It is a marathon. You have to be ready to be engaged until the end, because Longfellow is engaged until the end, and they're going to get paid for it. But this is us trying to save our communities, not just the Upper East Side, but all of New York City. In some of the meetings that we've had with council people, they have been jealous of the fact that we have R8B zoning, and they are looking to get it in their communities to stop, huge residential towers in the mid-block. So people want what we have, and we have to preserve that because people want it. And we shouldn't be giving away valuable air, light, and space and a quality of life for free. And that's what we're doing. We're giving it away for free. And we should not be doing that. And I applaud everyone for their perseverance and look forward to seeing and hearing from them in very many ways. And you need to spread the word because we need everyone to be involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Next, we have Peter Patch and then Russell Squire. And it looks like we have then reached the end.
I'm actually trying to suppress my outrage. I view myself as being biased in favor of development as long as two things are satisfied. One is it's in context, and second is that it has some measure of community support. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I can't understand how anybody who cares about this community could support this unless they've got other interests, that make it in their interest, because I see no contribution to the community, the well-being and the welfare of the community by this project. So I'm trying to figure out, and somebody will explain to me why we're even having this conversation. It's an outrage. It's a pink elephant. It doesn't belong, and we shouldn't even have to have the conversation. Having said that, I'm happy to join the Army.
Thank you, Peter. Actually, two more. It's Russell and then Adam Wald.
Thank you. So I think Valerie has really summed up the next steps, I think, very effectively, and I think others did as well. There are just a couple of things that I want to emphasize. So, it is, I think, helpful to talk to our local elected officials, but I think Valerie made the point that ultimately this is going to come down to the city council and the whole city council. And, those are the folks who are going to have the final say, and we hope that they will listen to the local community that this is going to affect, but ultimately it's going to come down to a vote of the city council, and that's really who we need to influence, and that's who the community needs to influence. And in order to do that, it's going to require participation at the various different stages of this process that Valerie outlined. So we are going to have, as it's been said, we're going to have our land use, board-wide land use meeting May 12th, and then another meeting 2 weeks after that. We're going to send out an announcement soon, soliciting written statements from folks, because I think that will, we're going to probably, I think we're going to have time limits at that meeting for the same reasons that we've had it here. It's just going to be a necessity for time reasons, but we're actually going to be accepting written statements and written testimony effectively from the community. So that will actually allow you, if you submit something in writing, that's going to become part of our board record, and that will allow folks to be even more fulsome in the points that they make and the points that they express. And so I would encourage folks to participate in that. And I think that's, that's what the next steps are going to look like.
Great. Thank you, Russell. That's a very good point about soliciting the written comments. Adam is next. Adam Wald.
Hi, thank you. And yes, Marty Bell, your presentation was wonderful. People who know me would know I'm generally one of the more pro-development people on the board, if not the most pro-development person on this board. And this project makes no sense to me. I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense from a financial perspective. Either Longfellow is getting such a great deal that it's worth them going through this effort. And if that's the case, then the Blood Center is not getting a great deal. So why are they going through this effort? People need to realize that the Blood Center is going to be displaced for this project for, according to the EIS, it says a 51-month construction period. It could easily be 52, 54, 56, 60 months they could be relocated. And then they could decide, oh, we've been in this new location for 5 years. I don't need to come back. Let me sell my site for $200 million to someone else who will put up not a 10 FAR, a 12 FAR, because that's what allowed under mandatory inclusionary housing. And this is a C27, not a C27A. This is a non-contextual zoning district. So let me put up a 12 FAR, non-contextual development, and all the while, Longfellow will have flipped the deal, or the Blood Center would have flipped the deal. They would have, maybe they'll split it. And you'll have no Blood Center. And who knows what'll be developed there. It could just be a general commercial office building with a movie theater. So everyone should keep that in mind.
Oh, movie theater, that's not so bad. Thank you, Adam. Let's see. All right, we have actually a total of 3 people who've already spoken, and I think it's fair to let them speak again. One is Betty Wallerstein, who is, I know, a member of the public, but and then, yeah.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to make a comment. Someone earlier said that spoke earlier about Memorial Sloan Kettering having, putting up buildings that are only 5-story high. I do want to say that they did not do that originally. They had 3 blocks in the 60s that they were going to be putting in tall towers, and the neighborhood asked for some assistance, and 3 people got together to do a coalition, and we won. They're the only people, I think, who ever won the fight with Memorial, but we won it, and the 3 people were Elizabeth Ashby, Terry Slater, and East 79th Street, myself. And so they did come back years later and put in the lower buildings. So we do have to show a fight. And I do think that Michelle's comment about having a rally, it would be wonderful. So many people have called tonight and said, what can we do? I think we should have a rally. It would be wonderful if we could do it before May 12th, so we would have some strength when we have to talk on May 12th. I think we're in a very bad situation, since I've just heard that the mayor has a very large outstanding debt to the law firm of Paul Selver, and he's going to be making a decision on this. That has to also go to the press, and that has to be examined. But I think we can get a group of people together. We should decide from the board where, or from everyone, where you want to go. But we should try to do something. There are many, many voices here. Thank you so much for letting me speak again.
Thank you, Betty. Now we have, we've got Elaine, Alita, and Ed, I think, as the final trio. Elaine.
Okay, I just wanted to say, and tonight's been just wonderful, because I think we are getting mobilized. And let me say that there are plans in place to do a rally when the moment is right. The other thing I wanted to say about Longfellow, they have never built a tall building. They have not been in New York. All their partnerships or so-called partnerships are out of New York. They're in Boston, they're in Idaho, et cetera. Go on their map. This is a real estate investment firm, and on their website, they have a check off. If you're interested in investing, contacting them. This is really a very high power commercial entity that has hooked into the health sciences. And they have no reputation here. We have no knowledge of how they pick tenants. All their other collaborations, if I want to say that word, although I don't know if it really is a collaboration, are with universities, because it's the faculty who raise the funding for their research. Longfellow does not have the capacity to go out and get research funding. They are not researchers. They're not medical people. They're not academics. So this, again, is another false impression that they give to the community. They have no skill here, whether it's research, construction, or anything else. What they only can do is ruin our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. We have Alita and then Ed, and then I think we can move the agenda.
Thank you again, Anthony. I just want to mention to also show up at the City Planning Commission hearing on this, so that your voice will be heard by people who are also part of the decision-making process. And then for those who are opposed to the Northwell Hospital plant expansion over on 77th and Lexington, where they want to go up over 3 times the zoned height on Lexington, they are and down the mid-block, way past the 75-foot height limit, they are probably watching this with great interest. So it is doubly important to defeat this project and defeat the Northwell project as well. We've already had a resolution on that at the full board, so I can say that. And I think I think that's it this time. I just wanted to mention that the hospital is probably waiting and awaiting a result that's positive. Oh, and also the mayor tweeted back in September that there was going to be an upzoning of the blood center. So does that taint the process? I think it does, judging by the way the city has dismissed all of our claims and questions and concerns. And if you look at the DEIS and the scope of work, are questions, or many, many questions, and those of other members of the public and preservation groups were dismissed by the City Planning Commission as being irrelevant. The only seeker categories, and seeker is the environmental determinant here of what concerns there are and what needs to be addressed. Out of all concerns, including zoning, effect on residential character, hazardous materials, environment, the only issues of concern to the City Planning Commission, and therefore to Longfellow and the Blood Center, are construction and shadows. And if you're not concerned about the environmental impact and the potential hazard of the BSL-3 lab, well, I'm very concerned about that. So I'll stop there and thank you again.
Thank you, Alita. Ed?
Thank you, Anthony. And just building on what Alita said, again, that's the smart portion of our program. I'm going to be the crass portion down in the street and saying, to build on what Alita is saying, we need to get out in front of the narrative. For those of you who have been here before, I will repeat myself at the risk of boring you for just 10 or 15 seconds. You will meet opposition to this when you're out in the street, and they will tell you, among other things, when you oppose this, that you are immediately a knee-jerk NIMBY, that you want death, that you are not for life sciences, that you're not for life, jobs, construction, economic development, all of these things. What I'm basically trying to say is they want to control the narrative, much like they did back in the day on the Twilight Zone. So people like Adam Wald, for those of you out there, those of you know Adam and myself, we are probably always on the opposite side of these kinds of discussions. And the fact that he and I are together on this is quite, I'm sure, surprising to him and to me, but it makes me very happy because Adam is a very, very smart member of our community board. And what I'm basically trying to say a long way around the block is, for those of you wanting to fight the message, okay, we can fight him at city planning, and you can fight him at BSA, and you can fight him at the city council, but you're going to have to win this war in the court of public opinion. And that is the message. And again, with all due respect to my fellow board member, Billy Freeland, who is running for office, I don't expect him to do a political ad at this meeting. But if he's on the street and him and other candidates are running, I expect you to ask him where he stands on this and what he did while this was going on. My point is, someone like Adam Wald, for those of you who are doing messaging, you must call him and get him involved. He is exactly the kind of individual with the kind of bona fides and credentials and just knowledge to combat all of the misinformation and disinformation that they're going to throw at you when you oppose this project, because they are absolutely correct. This project is about nothing more than money. That's it. That's just one person's humble opinion. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you all, everyone, for indulging me a second time. And I'm here even though I'm behind the Niagara Falls.
Great. Thank you, Ed. Don't get wet. The second item, and really thank you, everyone. I think Valerie put it extremely well, that this is a little bit of a dress rehearsal for the 12th, and I expect to see all of you there. The second item is a little bit of information on a bill in the state Senate right now that was sponsored by Robert Jackson, and then there are others, other mostly Manhattan state senators like Liz Kruger, Brad Hoylman, who are in fact co-sponsors. And this bill, the attempt of this bill is to, in effect, redefine the multiple dwelling law to eliminate some of the loopholes that have, let's say, in the not so distant past, have been exploited by developers in order to get taller buildings. Essentially right now, mechanical floors don't count against floor area. Floors can be of any height you decide. Spaces without walls do not count against floor area and without exterior walls. So this proposal essentially rewrites portions of the multiple dwelling law to in fact say that no deduction for mechanical spaces if they exceed 5% of building floor area. Floor height will be restricted in that floors 12 to 24 feet in height, except for the ground floor, will be counted as 2 floors. Floors 25 to 36 feet in height will be counted as 3 floors. Floors 37 to 48 feet in height will be counted as 4 floors. And floors 49 feet in height or greater will be counted as 5 floors. So that's sort of dealing with heights of buildings based on excessive height of floors. Now, the business about spaces without walls are like the giant voids where in fact there might be a partial floor and the rest of it is outdoors, is essentially outdoor space within the building envelope. And that will now count as floor area and with the same rules as all the other floors. We've been asked to write a letter of support and of this bill, and it is apparently a little time sensitive. And if somebody wants to comment, that's fine. If someone just, Elaine? Oh, wait a minute, Elaine, you're still muted. Ah, there you go.
I would suggest or recommend that a letter be sent supporting this legislation.
Okay, great. Thank you. And
keeping it short. I said I'm keeping it short. No comments. I heard what you said. I agree with it. We've been living through it.
Okay.
Send a letter, please.
Okay, we got 2 more people who want to comment. Alita and Rachel Levy. Alita.
Yeah, I don't know if I need to second what Elaine said, but I'm fully in support of a letter. What the legislation does is fill in the gaps from what city planning did. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Rachel Levy?
Thanks. I just wanted to add that, yes, exactly what Alita said, that this is filling in the gaps from what city planning did on the mechanical void text amendment 2 years ago. We were very involved in drafting some of this text, working with Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal and other advocates on this. And so I'm pleased that you're considering it.
Great, thank you, Rachel. And last, I think, Andrew Fine. Andrew.
I just wanted to second what Elaine, Alita, and the last speaker have said.
Great. Okay, so we will write a letter of support for this bill. And I saw Russell raised his thumb, so we'll get on that and get it out as soon as possible. And then that, I think I'm turning it over to Elizabeth.
We're on to old business.
You have two hands up. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. I don't know if you want to.
Oh, Rebecca and Adam. Okay. Rebecca Dangle.
Hi, I just have a question. Since people seem to feel so strongly in support of this this legislation, I'm just curious as to why we're going the letter route instead of a resolution.
Oh, simply because it's kind of time sensitive. So a resolution of support, if we did it now, we'd then be into the third week in May before it got out. So it seems as though a letter is the more expeditious thing at the moment. And somebody said at one of these meetings not so long ago that people read letters, but they don't read resolutions. So I'm not sure if that's true, but at any rate, I think that was the reason why, just so we can do it more quickly.
All right, sounds good.
Adam?
Hi, I do not support this measure, and I don't want my name on a letter, so I'd like there to be a vote, so I'm on the record as opposing this.
Okay, that's fine. So I understand that. And so I don't know how we do this. Well, we just have a vote. Okay, those board members who are opposed, we know Adam, if you would raise your hand, opposed, abstaining or not voting for cause, if you would raise your hands, that would be good. Otherwise, Adam appears to be so far the only one. And for the record, let's see. So then that would be how many ever to 1 to 0 to 0. And the how many evers are myself, Elizabeth, Adam, of course, is a no, Alita, Barbara Chalky, Barry Schneider, Billy Freeland, Craig Lader, Ed Hartzog, Elaine Walsh, Elizabeth Rose, Gail Barron, Jane Parshall, Marco Tamayo, May Malik, Michelle Birnbaum, Peter Patch, Rebecca Dangour, Rita Popper, Russell Squire, and Valerie Mason. Did I miss anybody? No. Okay, very good. Thank you. And thank you, Adam.
Okay. The first item of old business you were going to talk about, Anthony.
Oh, okay. Then I will.
Planning together proposed 10-year comprehensive planning cycle. And okay. Anthony, and then I'll go on.
Okay. So the planning together, the proposed comprehensive planning cycle, which we discussed last month, there's now going to be a task force, and the first meeting of the task force, stop me if I'm wrong, is on this Thursday evening, and the chairs are the board chair Russell Squire, and it's going to drive me crazy. And we are, and anyway, so that
Chair and
for,
Marshall.
right, thank you.
Okay, the next
And so
item.
anyway, so they're going to be meeting, and we will be, I'm sorry, Elizabeth, just one more little detail. We will be discussing that at the June land use meeting. I think that was what we decided earlier today. Yes, Russell is agreeing. So, and Rebecca. Okay. So, so it'll be discussed at the June meeting, so that there should be a little time to think about it in more detail before then. So that's it.
Okay. The news on the part of the New York State budget was the governor's very bad proposal to override our local zoning, and mercifully that's been withdrawn. The proposed zoning text amendment concerning open restaurants, I hope Alida is going to talk to us about that. Are you, Alida?
I was waiting to be unmuted. Yes, there is going to be a text amendment about open restaurants plan. I don't really understand what's going on because the mayor said open restaurants and open streets are permanent, but the city council did pass legislation calling for permanence of the open restaurants program. So the concern is that the open restaurants program be permanent, not the specifics of the text amendment, but the idea of the text amendment, along with what the mayor has said and what the city council has enacted. So I would like to urge to suggest that there be a letter asking for periodic evaluations of a program, because we don't know, as people pointed out with respect to the blood center, what the landscape is going to look like. And once people are going back to restaurants and they are at full capacity, will they need to be on the street? What is the cost to the public of restaurants being on the street with health and safety and transportation and assorted other issues? There's no provision. Their landmarks has not been addressed. What happens if there are restaurants in front of landmarks and in historic districts that are out on the sidewalk? So there are other aspects to the letter that were not in the resolution that we had examined at the previous small business zoning, combined zoning meeting. Was it just last week or the week before? Time is funny now. But anyway, so I would like to urge a letter saying that it should be periodic evaluations, and there are a number of other issues, including landmarks and historic districts. Thank you.
Any comments?
I see we have
well, I think then, who has a paw up?
We have, in no particular order, Michelle, Rita, Russell, and Elizabeth.
Okay.
Why don't we just start with Rita, since she got her hand up first.
Yeah.
Or Michelle, go ahead.
Sorry, muted me. I'm sorry. What I wanted to say is to write a letter in the way that presumes that this is happening, which it seems it is, but to presume that, and also to soften our resolution in opposition, I'm a little concerned about. I'm happy to have a letter, but I would like the letter attached to our resolution. And in the letter, I would like to enumerate the additional concerns that that further substantiate our resolution. So, Alida, if that makes sense to you, or if I can give any further clarification, but I'm just trying to say that we disapproved it, and this is just adding additional commentary. Who's writing this letter, firstly? Can anybody tell me who'll be writing the letter?
I think Alida is raising her hand and volunteering.
Okay, so Alida will be writing the letter. So Do you realize what I mean, and what are your thoughts about what I'm saying?
I do, but there is a procedural quandary, Michelle, that called for a letter writing instead. So
No, I'm agreeing to the letter.
I understand. I
Yeah.
know, but not because there was no resolution at the full board, we can't attach it to a resolution. So there you go.
I think we can iron out the fine points, the sort of a general drift of what you are suggesting, Michelle, is certainly appropriate in the letter, and we'll do what we can to make that work. How's that?
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Thank you.
Elizabeth Rose?
Thank you, Elizabeth. So I'm going to kind of take a page from Adam Wald's playbook. I would ask that there be a vote on this. I am completely supportive of the open restaurant program becoming permanent. And I am completely supportive of, at least as I understand them, some of the zoning overrides in question. So I don't think that this is a unanimous, and we did not discuss this at the full board meeting last week. So this is not a unanimous, there's a resolution that has passed here.
Thank you. Who else has is another speaker?
You have Rita, and then Russell, and then Craig.
Alida, and then Russell.
Rita Popper.
Rita.
Oh, Rita. Rita Popper.
I'm in favor of the letter, but I do have a question. What happens to, will this negate sidewalk cafes? Because remember, people were paying to have sidewalk cafes. What happens to that now? Just a question.
I think the point of what Alida is trying to say here is that from what we know of the city planning text amendment, the purpose of the text amendment is not to make the open restaurants program permanent. The city council has already done that. It is in fact to make it easier to get permits for open restaurants rather than make it as difficult or in fact require fees like we have now for the sidewalk cafes. And so, and one among the very serious questions that have come up, and they're questions we don't know, has the Department of City Planning, and this is the reason why a letter at this point is good, has the Department of City Planning considered what open restaurants with unrestricted or minimally restricted sidewalk sheds, it's the wrong word, I know, but in landmark districts do? Does that mean that they will not be subject to landmarks because they're technically temporary? Does it mean that they are subject to landmarks approval? What are the, so I guess the thing is that it would be good for those who have questions about this to be able to raise those questions before city planning produces its text. That's all. That's what this letter is for.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Russell?
Yeah, so I don't think we should write a letter for, in part, some of the same reasons that came up at the board meeting, but I think basically, this is still something that we're evaluating, and I think that ultimately, we're going to look at this. So first of all, this is going to be, committees are going to have more time to sort of say what they think about open restaurants generally, and I know that this is going to be a joint item at the next Transportation Committee meeting, which I think will sort of delve into the merits of the open restaurants program in general, in addition to talking about sort of changes that, you know, people might want to see in the program and things of that nature. I think this kind of recommendation, I think, should ultimately be folded into our views on what the open restaurants program is and should be. I think that I also think that sort of as a practical matter, if the idea is to try and ask questions of city planning before they release the text, I don't think we're going to get answers to our questions before they release the text. I think the questions, you know, the answer to the questions is going to be in the text. I mean, city planning is not going to tell us that they intend to do X, Y, and Z before they actually release the text. The text is going to be what they ultimately do. And I agree that, you know, we're going to want to know answers to some of these questions, but I don't think that writing a letter now is going to get us there. And ultimately, yeah, I just think that, you know, this kind of a specific recommendation of saying, well, we want to have periodic review, I think that should just be part of our broader, you know, feedback on open restaurants and what our view is on open restaurants when we, you know, when we do that.
Thank you, Russell.
Yeah, I
I'd
just
like
have to, Elizabeth, I just want to just say one thing before you do. And that is that it's one thing not really to be able to comment on a private application to city planning. But when it's early in their process. But when in fact it's city planning writing the zoning text amendment, any input, even if we ask questions and they don't send us an answer, if they think about those issues, and they might not have thought about them, it becomes part of what they feel they have to deal with as they're working through writing the text. That's the only reason. Because once we get a text, once we get the text of a text amendment, it's a thing. And then it's the regular, effectively the regular ULURP process. And at the end of that, it's the city council, and we have the blood center fight all over again if we don't agree with it. That's all. It's just an opportunity to try and shape the document rather than just at the end, just oppose it. That's all.
Well, sure. So I think a couple things there. I mean, I think the specific point that's been raised about wanting to have periodic review, to me, that's more of like that relates more to what the sort of broader rules about open restaurants are going to be, and isn't necessarily related to what the zoning text amendment might say. I mean, my understanding of the zoning text amendment is basically the council has passed this, you know, the council and the mayor have passed a law that says that open restaurants is going to become permanent, and we can weigh in on that. But basically that law is inconsistent with or requires changes with the zoning resolution as it currently stands. And so the purpose of the zoning text amendment, right, is to align and essentially adjust the zoning resolution in line with this change to city law that has been made. And so from that perspective, I mean, I just think a lot of the questions that are being raised are really questions about the larger mechanics of open restaurants and how that's going to work, and they're not really zoning related.
But then why is there a zoning text amendment? It was just a comment. I don't expect an answer.
Yeah, I think the answer is because, again, like there do need to be zoning changes. And I think the way that they've handled it up till now is they've basically just, you know, it's been done on a temporary basis. But to make it permanent, there are inconsistencies with the zoning resolution that have to be addressed, but there are also other questions that have to be answered about how the thing is going to be administered, because the current temporary system isn't going to be the long-term system. So it's both. I mean, I think they're working out what the details of how it's going to work in the longer term are going to be, and we want to do that. And that's a larger process than just the zoning text amendment, which I think specifically relates to zoning changes that need to happen so that you don't have this inconsistency between the zoning resolution and what the new law is. So I think they're related, but they're separate, and I don't, and so that's I think the distinction that's important to keep in mind here. And so I think we want to weigh in on how this is going to be made permanent, and I don't think it's going to become permanent until, or the new permanent sort of framework, from what I understand, is going to happen in September, basically, because the temporary framework has been extended until September, and the zoning resolution is sort of part of what needs to happen to kind of make the whole thing permanent, but it's not the whole story. And I think the point that Alita specifically raised really relates to the larger framework of it. It's not zoning related, and I think a lot of the questions that have been raised here, I think, are sort of broader.
Could I just respond to that? Is that all right?
Sure.
Yes.
So they relate to everything. Zoning, to have sweeping zoning changes forever to enable the restaurant program to become permanent is what I believe the combined zoning and small business committees were objecting to, was that we don't know. And even if it's enabling it, it could enable a permanent restaurant program in Flushing only. It could, we don't know what anyone is thinking. We're saying slow down and don't pass these huge zoning changes that will be very, very hard to undo. Or if you're going to do it, at least consider some of these other points before enacting something that affects the entire city and affects it forever without adequate opportunity for the public to respond. So yes, are propane heaters dangerous? Should there be specific regulations? Probably, but that's not the zoning issue. The zoning issue is to wipe out everything that's protected communities without considering what communities have to say, and to do it in a way that is permanent and therefore very difficult to change. It's not that we can parse the language of the zoning resolution or the proposed text amendment, which we can't do without actually having it. So I understand your point. The point is to say, slow down and consider some of these other points before you write a zoning text amendment that has the potential to change the entire landscape of the city. So that's why it feels like a letter is timely now before they actually issue the zoning text, the proposed text amendment.
I think that I agree on that, and I feel these are extraordinary times. The outdoor restaurants came in as a result of the pandemic. We've been going through the pandemic. I think that this is, whatever it is, whatever its merits, this is premature, and I don't think we should enact this sort of legislation until we get back to normal and see what we actually need when we find out what normal is in a couple of years' time. The next person is Craig Lader.
Hi, everyone. I'll be brief, especially because I think Russell said a lot of what I was going to say, especially in regards to the matter of periodic reviews. I just want to, I guess, remind everyone that the train has left the station in this case, and we know open restaurants is going to move forward, whether we as a committee or a board appreciate it and approve of it or not. I fear that we're, in terms of this discussion, just jumping the gun here and again, just like we did last month, immediately going to the worst motives that come to mind as far as what the city is thinking in terms of a zoning text amendment. And we need to really just wait and see what it is. I can't imagine, and maybe I'm naive, but I can't imagine that it's going to be this completely pie in the sky proposal that just opens everything up without any regard to some of the concerns that have been raised tonight. And I don't think anyone would accept that if it were just a blanket zoning text amendment. So I just, in terms of to use the phrase slow down, I think we should slow down. We can definitely talk about this and strategize, and there's a lot to talk about in terms of how the open restaurants program has been administered and how the things that have worked with it, the things that have not worked so well, the things we would like to see improve, the things we would like to see change. There's a lot that's imperfect about it, but I think we need to just take a deep breath and wait until we actually see what happens, because just as we mobilize for things like the blood center, if there's opposition to something that's wildly inappropriate, we'll mobilize against that as well. And I think that would be the time to do it.
Thank you. Elaine Walsh?
I think it's very important that we send a letter now so that we're on record with what our concerns are. Our community has closed streets. We have side streets that you cannot even safely cross at this point because of both sides. You've got these sheds on both sides of the street. I think it's important for us to state what our concerns are and ask them to consider it. The city council and the mayor, I find, were wrong to push this through when we're in a state of crisis. We're not going to be here at this point. I've talked to people in the village that have narrow streets, like some of our streets. They are besides themselves. We all understand the economics. God knows, I told you before, my brother's restaurant's closed. But that doesn't mean we throw everything out. And I would recommend that we move and send a letter. Let's take a vote and go on record what our concerns are.
Thank you. Michelle Birnbaum?
Thank you. Yeah, I support that. Also, I understand what you're saying, Russell. You explained it very well, as did Anthony. But I don't see a reason to delay. In other words, you can't be faulted for getting ahead of something. We understand the differences between what may be the broader set of rules and what they have to address about permits, and they may even have size constraints. They may have certain kind of aesthetics that they're going to require. And I understand we can weigh in on that later. But the basic issue here of getting ahead of the issue before they write the text, I can't see how that could hurt. It doesn't hamper anything we're going to say or do going forward. It can only do good. So to me, I would be very disturbed if we didn't write that letter. To me, we'd be passing an opportunity. They really did this in the dark of night. I don't know. I mean, I follow things pretty closely, and I wasn't aware about this being in front of the council. We never had an opportunity to talk about it, even as individuals, forget about as a community board. I don't think anybody knew about this. The first I heard about it was when they announced it. I think it was the Transportation Committee. So I don't think we should miss the opportunity of getting ahead of this. I can't see any upside to that, but I can see a lot of downsides. So I would ask that we please write a letter tonight. I think it's very important. And I think Russell and others, if they want to have some screening of that letter or have that letter written by, by Alita and others, that's fine. But I think we should make our points. We should let the council know our concerns. Let city planning know what we'll be looking for. And we should not miss this opportunity. There's no rationale for missing it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to board members who haven't spoken before I go to the ones who already have. Marco Tamayo.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I think to write a letter is good. Why? Because we need to establish the inconsistency that them themselves are creating. Resilience. Now we come in at these weather conditions. We don't know what's going to happen. If we come in a flooding, if we come in a superstorm Sandy, this precarious structures on the streets without no anchor to the floor. It will be turn around, cross the street in some cases, and the other one will be ended probably in 9th Street and East End, probably because of the pitch of that. So we have to be, that is our obligation to prevent that kind of situation. We have to let it know that they are going against what they brought already, resilience. And we have to be ready to protect. And in other scenarios, maybe these precarious structures, all the 2x4s are gonna be flying. They're gonna destroy the other buildings, or maybe even kill people. So now is coming the issue of the sidewalk cafes and the outdoor cafes. The sidewalk cafes, they pay insurance. They pay fees. Insurance in the event that something is happening outside of the building. These buildings, we don't have anything at all. This precarious structure or shacks do not have anything at all. Obviously, it was created and was permitted because of the emergency. I mean, this is right, and I think it's fine, and I'm supporting this kind of structure. But that, it cannot continue, and we have to let it know that the safety is paramount in our community. The resilience, the life of our residents, and as a community board, we have to be careful about the life of the residents, the investment of those buildings that can be destroyed. And I think to write a letter, I think is appropriate. Pass a resolution is wrong, but to write a letter, to let it know what are the inconsistencies that they are proposing, it has to be addressed in whatever decision that they want to make it. Thank you.
Thanks, Marco. Okay, now, Rebecca Dangour.
Hi, I just have a question and then a comment. My question is, what exactly would the letter entail? I know, being on the transportation committee, I know on the agenda, we're doing the first item is not only discussing kind of the future, but also feedback on the current program. So I'm just a little curious as to what that is. And second is a procedural thing. I think since a letter isn't voted on by the full board, and has to be signed by the chair, I really think it's kind of under, it's up to Russell whether or not, he thinks a letter is appropriate, just because it's not voted on by the full board. But I'm still a little confused on what the letter would include exactly.
Thank you. Okay. Now we go back to Alida.
Thank you, Elizabeth. To answer Rebecca's point about what the letter would, well, I see also, Elizabeth, Peter Patch has his hand raised and he didn't
Yeah,
speak
I just
before.
saw
I'll wait for Peter.
You wait for him. Okay,
Sure.
Peter Patch.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand what the downside is to writing the letter, and I have absolutely no sense that there's a downside to that. It seems to me the worst thing that can happen if you write a letter is for it to be ignored. That's basically a zero cost. And the notion of having influence earlier in the process rather than later strikes me as the time when we're more likely to be effective. So I absolutely support that. Thank you. Thank
you very much. Okay, no other board members? No. Alida.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So Rebecca, I guess I envision the letter, and of course people should comment on this, and there'll be plenty of opportunity for people to weigh in. Even as chair, I always sought collaboration. But as a mediator, I know that when someone files a complaint or someone files a charge with something like the EEOC, maybe, that heels are dug in and people buy the value of their words and the language. If you can try and settle something before litigation or arbitration is started, the chances are greater, they're just better that something could settle because people haven't dug their heels in. I'm not saying that city planning digs their heels in, but when they've written something, they've submitted it, they've talked to various community boards, elected officials, whoever they're reaching out to, they are more vested in it, and it becomes more difficult to have any impact on it. I don't expect, as Peter said, that there would be a negative to writing a letter. It's just saying, well, maybe the zoning changes that you contemplate shouldn't be permanent until we see what the impact is of all of this program, because it is much harder to change zoning than to rewrite a DOB rule pertaining to something related to those outdoor little structures. So that's the purpose of this, is to say there are considerations here, and zoning is a big sweeping change. Just rethink it maybe, or not rethink it because we don't know what they're saying, but just consider the kinds of issues that we've raised and that maybe other boards have as well. And that's the purpose of it, where we can't fight something that we don't know the language of, but once the language is there, it becomes much, much harder. We've seen this every time someone comes with a piece of legislation that they have that they want approval for. It's just much harder to alter the words than it is to alter it or to have some influence in advance. Thank you, Elizabeth.
So, sorry, to just further, so it would be strictly about zoning and not about the other concerns? Like that would be under jurisdiction of other committees, or would it include that as well?
Thanks for unmuting. We raised a lot of concerns at the small business and zoning joint meeting. And so it depends on what everyone else thinks, really, because I'm not the orchestrator of anything. I'm just the scribe here. So I don't know, but by saying to the zoning people over at City Planning that these are a lot of the issues that we've raised, maybe it gives them pause about doing something that is permanent when there are so many questions and we don't have answers to those questions yet. Not only because the temporary program is bound to be different from what's permanent, but also because the whole pandemic, as it eases up, is changing, and as it ends, hopefully, and as people start to fill restaurants again, it will change. And there are some very large global questions, such as to what extent should there be zoning changes in advance of knowing what that landscape is going to look like? Why is the city, I mean, these are my questions. Why is, and this wouldn't not necessarily be in a letter without everyone's approval, but why is the city really subsidizing restaurants when they might not need it at the end of the pandemic? They didn't need it before the pandemic. So those are questions that say, again, wait a minute, wait for a permanent zoning change until we know more of what's going on, because zoning changes are that much harder to write. When it's raising them and hopefully having some kind of influence over city planning, but it's not, we're advisory to begin with. And for something like this, where we have even a fraction potentially of our normal extensive advisory powers. So it's just saying, consider more when you're writing this text amendment. Be careful about the kinds of words. Maybe consider some of these other factors, because they're just a bunch of people, as we're just a bunch of people, and no one is perfect, and no one person could consider every facet or factor involved in a decision that is this significant. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you. The next one is Russell.
So, and hopefully this will answer Peter's question also, but I want to just respond to all the points that have been made. You know, the issues that people are raising really relate to the merits of whether open restaurants is good or not. People are basically raising reasons for why they don't like open restaurants, or why they don't think the open restaurants program should be permanent. And folks are entitled to that view. And it may be that ultimately is the view of the board. But currently, the board has not taken a position on the merits of open restaurants. And that's the issue that I have, is that basically the letter that you're describing is a letter that addresses the merits of it and basically says, we're concerned, you know, we don't like it. And that's effectively what's coming through in the letter, as though, even though I think, you know, it's being described in a way as saying, well, we're raising these concerns and whatever, but the reality is what it's really saying is, we don't like X about open restaurants, or we don't like Y about open restaurants. And I think when we're talking about writing a letter to get out ahead of something or to get on the record about something, we're expressing a view on it. And as an example of that, the letter that we talked about earlier in this meeting about the bill, we're going to be expressing a view on the bill. And I think we're entitled to do that in a letter. And we often do letters of that nature. But on an issue where I think it's not as clear cut and the board hasn't taken a position on it, I think maybe the board has a different position on it, or at a minimum, it's going to be a closer question. I don't think it's appropriate for us to write a letter of that nature. And just to get kind of specific here, I mean, and Alita, I think, has sort of given the most detailed description of what the sort of letter would envision, we're envisioning, to say, maybe you shouldn't make this permanent yet, maybe you should slow down. That's a comment on the merits, to say, we don't want this to be permanent yet. We want a temporary solution, not a permanent zoning change. That's on the merits. That goes directly to the merits of the question of whether this should be permanent or not. To say, once the thing is written, you can't fight against it and fight against what's in it. That, to me, is describing a fight against something on the merits. It's saying, once this comes out and we don't like it, we can't fight it. We have a better chance of fighting against it and stopping it if we do it now. That is about opposition on the merits of the question of whether it should be permanent or not.
Excuse me.
Not something that the board has done.
Russell, with all due respect, that's wrong. I am not going to say anything else, but I'm sorry, it's wrong. That's not what this letter is about. This letter is about zoning, and it's about changes to the zoning and what those changes mean throughout the city. It isn't about the merits of open restaurants. The open restaurants is a fact. The question is, how will open restaurants be regulated under the zoning resolution? And as of now, we have an opportunity to actually at least express opinions as to how this program will be regulated in the future. And if we don't write a letter, that's fine, that's okay, but it's not about the merits of open restaurants, it's about the potential for bad zoning. And I'm not going to say anything else.
So that's fine. Let me just respond to that. So first of all, I mean, again, I'm just going based on what Alita was describing about the letter and questions like, why is the city subsidizing restaurants? You can't tell me that that's not about the merits of open restaurants. But beyond that, even if the question is the merits of the zoning text amendment and the merits of whether it's appropriate to do a zoning change, that to me is a question on the merits of that more limited issue, but it's still going to the merits. And it's still about a question that I don't frankly feel comfortable saying that this is the position of the board on, when there's still a lot more discussion to be had about it. And basically what you're talking about saying is, we don't think that this should change, or we don't think there should be a change, or that goes to what the merits are. And so a real question that was going to, a letter that was going to sort of ask questions and say, what's the answer to this going to be, again, or to say, city planning, you're writing this thing, how are you going to handle, landmarks? I guess that puts the issue in front of them. That's sort of neutral. But to say, to write a letter that's saying, why are we subsidizing restaurants, or we think that you need to not make this permanent now, or something, that kind of stuff, that's really goes beyond answering questions. And it's just more taking a position than I think is, what we should be doing right now.
Okay, we'll go to Craig later.
Hi, I'd like to make a motion, and if seconded, to speak to it. I'd like to make a motion that we write a letter that focuses solely on zoning, and that this letter be presented to the full board for the full board to vote on.
Anyone seconded? Is,
I think I actually. It's
has
Matt.
Elizabeth Rose seconded it? Yes.
Yes.
So I'm just listening to this discussion, and I think it's clear that this committee is very anxious to send something. And I think if it's done in a way that really is laser focused on the questions that need to be asked that don't speak to the broader concerns about open restaurants, but really stay to the zoning discussion, the full board may very well be amenable to something like that. And we'll all have a chance to read the letter and assess the letter and make our determination as to whether it's appropriate or not to send. But I think the onus will then be on whoever's writing the letter in this committee to do it in a way that's palatable to the full board, where we all have a chance to be able to vet it and to be able to determine whether it is appropriate or not based on the content of the letter itself.
Okay. I will go to Michelle.
Yeah, I think, yeah, in light of, because the chair of the board has sort of final say on whether or not he's comfortable with such a letter, and because Russell has expressed the fact, I think, that he could be comfortable depending on what the letter says, and keeping in mind the parameters that he and Craig have laid out, I would be supportive of that. But I'm thinking that if that's the case, and if time is of the essence, that might not necessarily need to be done in a resolution with a full board vote. In other words, if you're saying that you're comfortable with the letter, if it addresses only certain parameters, you could probably be a party with the leader to writing it. And that being the case, and then our discussion today would be that a letter will go out with only and with Russell's approval. So because in every committee we've written letters like this before and it didn't have to go to the board for a vote, I think with those parameters, we could probably have a letter sent out of this committee. With Russell will, screen it first, and assuming that it complies with those, with what you've laid out. So in that way, we can eliminate the whole, resolution and waiting however many weeks and blah, 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 and just, get the answers to the questions, which it seems all of us agree that we want. It's just the extraneous that we're disagreeing on, but we all agree on what we want to know about what could be included in a zoning text amendment. So I would hope that that could be the case.
Can I respond? So yeah, I think I'm okay with a letter that is, as I said, that raises genuinely neutral questions that we're hoping the zoning text amendment addresses. So, again, I think to take the example of landmarks, basically situations where we're saying, look, we want to avoid uncertainty on the other side of this. This is the stuff we're worried about, and we want to make sure that you're addressing all of these issues that could come up. I think that, that can be done in a neutral way that I would be comfortable with. So to say, look, we just want to make sure that you're looking at the question of, what should be, how will this work as it relates to landmarks, or how can this, work in that context, or other kinds of things, and not questions that are, again, go to sort of the merits of it. But I think if there are questions we can raise that are neutral in that way, that is something I'm comfortable with, if that's something that folks are interested in.
I think I'm unmuted. I think that makes sense. It's something that we can do. I think there are a lot of questions in addition to landmarks and historic districts and previous zoning and precedent, just talking about the zoning, not about the merits of a restaurant program, or as any program that was put forth, we would be concerned about these things. So to the extent that you'll read this letter, you'll edit this letter, you may even write this letter, just let's make sure that we've included everything that falls into the categories as you've stated them. So I'm comfortable with that. And having said that, if you're comfortable too, I wonder if Craig would withdraw his resolution.
I want to hold off and see where this discussion goes. And I want to make sure that regardless, there's a mechanism that would allow everyone to be able to review such a letter. And again, I still think it's appropriate for the full board to be able to see it, because this does transcend committees. And especially with this discussion coming up next week, I think it's very premature to be doing this out of this committee now, where other pieces of the puzzle may actually be filled in next week and subsequent to that.
Well, we're not advocating. This is going to be raising questions that we would like city planning to look at. We're not advocating. For example, won't it be universal that everybody would like to know how this affects historic districts and landmarks? I mean, that's nobody knows the answer to that question. So I don't think we know we don't have the answer to that question. I don't see how that's a controversial thing to request, and why a delay is necessary in order to ask for something like that. We haven't done that in any other committee. I mean, these are just, you're asking questions, that's all.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Michelle. I know Valerie has her hand up and has not spoken, and is probably the only person who hasn't spoken yet.
I mean, first of all, as far as I can tell, Craig's motion is not on the floor anymore because no one seconded it. So that's number one.
No, actually, Elizabeth Rose seconded.
Oh, she did. Okay, sorry, I did not see that. Some people may be surprised by it, but I don't see why we are responding to something that we have no idea what it's going to look like. I mean, if we send a letter, I'm thinking that we should just say that a text amendment is premature right now. That, we're for a temporary extension, maybe, of what is happening until a certain point, but we would not recommend a text amendment yet for a number of reasons. I mean, once again, we have a city council that is being overturned in January. We'll have a new mayor, a new city planning commission, and I think we're putting way too much, giving way too much power to a government that is on its way out. And I don't, if anything, I think we should just be saying, we don't know what you're sending, but we think it's premature that, there are so many issues, and whatever we would be raising in this letter, we're going to be giving people perhaps ideas that they don't even have. People are throwing the word permanent out there with no thought of what it really means. And I think, to Craig's point, right, isn't that why we're having this transportation meeting, so that we can hear from the DOT, what they're thinking by what they mean by permanent? So even if we decide to write a letter, shouldn't we at least wait to hear what they have to say on Tuesday, and then make this motion after we hear what they say in the transportation committee meeting? I mean, I just feel like we're poking at air here, and it's not a meaningful letter. Because I would like to say, I don't think that any textual amendment should be proposed before January 1st, 2022. That's what I think.
I would think, which I repeat myself, I apologize, but I think until we know what normal life will be after the end of the pandemic, we shouldn't make permanent zoning changes at this time. I think it's the timing that is so bad.
I mean,
Okay.
Russell, I don't know, I'd appreciate what you think of that.
To your points, Valerie, I think, so to say we don't want this to be permanent, we need you to slow down, that is not the kind of letter that I think we should write. I'm open to the idea of waiting to write the letter until we have the meeting next week, and it's possible that after that meeting we'll sort of, I still think I was going to say, maybe after that meeting we can sort of have a more substantive letter, but I just don't want to get like, again, the issue with letters is, you're getting ahead of the board. And I think there are times where it's appropriate to do that. And whereas, chair, I'm sort of comfortable doing that. And this just isn't one of those times. I just think this is too big of and too complicated and close, probably. I don't frankly know what the board's view as a whole is going to be of it, to sort of write a letter one way or another to say, slow this down, we don't like it, or this is good, we want, I just, I think anything that goes to the merits, I think is really going to have to wait for the full board. So from that perspective, I'm not sure if it's beneficial to wait to send the letter or not, if it's going to be a neutral letter, although I think, the transportation committee meeting may also raise other issues that we have sort of neutral questions on, or similar kinds of things where we say, look, we want we want this to be addressed. So from that perspective, maybe it's worth waiting. But again, I'm sort of open on that.
Could I just respond? Because this is just about the zoning, and the other issues that will be raised, I imagine, at the Transportation Committee meeting and at subsequent meetings, if there are to the substance, to the type of specific rules from DOH, DOB, DOT, all of the agencies that have impact on regulation and enforcement. And this is just about the zoning issues and concern for what other kinds of impact the zoning could be in a neutral way. And I just want to clarify, Russell, that those are my own feelings about the city subsidizing restaurants, and I support restaurants. I'm not, and I'm really glad that we had this open restaurant program, because otherwise our landscape would be completely decimated. And I'm glad that it's not. But those were not the kinds of things that I had intended including in the letter. I was just shaking my head vigorously as you were speaking, because I'm not, and I know what a neutral letter is, and I know what an advocacy letter is, and an opinionated letter, and I've got lots of opinions, but not to put into this letter. So that's all I'll say on that. Thank you.
Okay, Elizabeth Rose.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So I first just like to observe that this issue is clearly making strange bedfellows, that there are a lot of opinions on this that are not aligned with what we typically expect in our conversations. I think the issue with the letter coming from this zoning committee is that other than the existing zoning that prohibits sidewalk cafes on 72nd, 79th, and 86th streets, it has not been enumerated what are the zoning changes or the zoning text that would need to be changed to accommodate an intended permanence of an open restaurant program, right? Because at its heart, the open restaurant program it allows every restaurant to open a sidewalk cafe, and it allows every restaurant where certain street conditions permit to also open tables and have some sort of a structure in the street, and also have certain types of heaters outside. The kinds of comments that have really come up this evening, and I just reread sort of all of the minutes from the joint Small Business Committee and Zoning and Development Committee meeting from the prior month, have a range of questions for a range of different agencies. And so it seems to me that the real set of questions from the discussion of the prior committee meeting is a letter to City Council asking questions about that apply to a very broad range of agencies. So if there's to be a letter from Zoning and Development Committee, I think it needs to be very specific to identifying the existing zoning that is in conflict and asking what the intent is. But I do think there is a broader set of questions for City Council, which could be a more neutral letter. That is simply, we would appreciate, since City Council is interested in passing a law, and they may have already passed it, I may be just not have paid enough attention here. There are lots of questions about, and I think they're very legitimate, about implementation and what are going to be the rules and boundaries around things. You know, some restaurants have done a spectacular job with their outdoor space. Some restaurants have done a lousy design job. And we know from pocket parks throughout the city that you can't legislate good design. So what I haven't really heard are, if it's from zoning and development, these are the specific things that would need to be changed that would make open restaurants permanent, and what the issues are with them. But I think that the discussion and the sentiment that some people seem to be feeling is not about the zoning text amendment. And the zoning text amendment is really just a teeny tiny portion here. And so I just, in general, I'm finding this discussion of the letter to be more broader than the specific zoning issues. And I don't think we've had a full discussion of the specific zoning issues.
Thank you. Elaine Walsh.
I'd like us to move on the letter that's been proposed by Craig on the floor with that process, and then I will speak to it. This discussion is about zoning. I don't understand why transportation is being given more attention. They can write a letter to DOT. It's interesting. Everybody's known that this was on the agenda, that small business and zoning met together. Transportation seems to control what they want on their agenda, and then we should defer always to them. This is very upsetting to me. Zoning is what makes us a civilized city. Without it, why bother? The issues around the outdoor restaurants is around an issue of permanency and temporary. We don't know all the answers, but we have a right and a responsibility in representing our community to get ahead of the issue and ask what's going on, one, and two, these are our zoning issues. I'm talking about zoning. I'm not getting into what the impact it is to quality of life on buildings that are complaining, many in our area, about the noise. I'm not getting into any of that. That's an issue for street life, to be honest with you. This is about zoning. Thank you. And please call the question to somebody second, or whatever the process is for a letter. I'm really tired tonight.
I think the question was seconded.
Marco seconded calling the question. Oh, he had his thumb up for a second. Oh, and Ed
Okay.
as well.
All those in favor of calling the question? What do we do? Raise our paws?
Yeah, I think we do this. I think we do the hand raise.
For
no.
calling question or
calling the question?
This is to call the question.
Yes.
This is yes on calling the question or no on calling the question?
This is yes on calling the question, Russell.
So
in other words,
raised hands or no?
No, raised hands are yes.
Okay.
I mean, we can unraise our hands if you like.
That's right. All right.
What do you want?
Sure. No, I don't care. That's okay.
We're talking about calling. All we're trying to do is call the question. In other words, to go to a vote. So let's say raised hand in this case is yes, just to mix it up. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that, but it's late. 6, 8, 10, 11.
I think
that's a majority. It's right. I mean,
yes.
I think there are 11.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okie doke.
Okay.
Okay. All those who want to abstain, vote no, or not voting for cause. Now you raise your hand. Otherwise, it's assumed that you'll vote in favor of sending this letter.
Sending the letter, and also the corollary to that, having that letter also approved by the full board, if I'm not mistaken. Craig is nodding. Yes. Okay.
Correct. Oh yes, Craig, could you clarify your resolution or?
Yes, it was for a letter to be written by the Zoning Development Committee that is focused on specific zoning issues of concern related to the open restaurants program and the upcoming zoning text amendment, and that the letter shall be made available to the full board so we can vote on the draft letter at the full board meeting.
You don't want to split the thing into two questions?
No, I want it as a single question.
Okay, all those in favor of the resolution as proposed by Craig, keep your hand down.
Wait, Valerie is frantically raising her hand. It's and smiling.
Sorry, can I don't know if this is a friendly amendment or out of order, but Craig, would you consider, instead of it going to the board, since your resolution is for the letter to be zoning matters only, can it be, instead of going to the full board, that the chairs of zoning and the chair of the community board would have the final review of the letter so as not to hold it up for that? Because I have confidence in the chairs of zoning and the chair of the board that they can limit it to zoning issues.
I think there are too many stakeholders involved across our different committees that would want to be able to see that letter and be able to potentially comment on it. So I really don't want to separate.
You said it was going to be specifically matters of zoning. We don't vote on letters from transportation that are specifically related to transportation.
But this is an issue that transcends zoning,
look,
and I think it would be inappropriate.
Craig wants it the way he wants it.
Okay.
If you like all of it, you vote yes. If you don't like all of it,
he rejects my friendly amendment, and so therefore, okay, then I'm going to raise my hand and vote no.
Okay. The motion fails, I believe.
Shall I call on people or to
Please.
clarify their votes?
Yeah.
Okay, Anthony, you're the first one up.
No.
Are you writing down these? Or
Oh, okay, yeah.
So Anthony, no. Barbara Chaki,
Abstain. I had comments and I had questions and nobody would call on me. So I'm abstaining.
okay, thank you. Michelle,
No.
thank you. Alita,
No.
thank you. Elaine,
No.
thank you. Ed,
No.
thank you. Rita, unmute.
No.
Thank you. Adam Wald,
No.
thank you. Valerie,
No.
Gail,
No.
thank you. Elizabeth Ashby,
Abstain.
thank you. And then finally, Marco Tamayo.
No.
Thank you. Oh, Alita, did we call on you already or no?
You did. I was going to, if this didn't pass, I was going to propose a substitute resolution, if that's the right term. I'm sorry, I'm tired too.
Okay. Real quickly, Peter Patch, were you voting
No.
no on that?
Yes. No, correct.
Thank you. I'm gonna lower all the hands, Anthony.
Yeah. Yeah, I wrote it.
So the others in attendance would have been Craig, Rebecca, Dangor, Russell, Billy, Freeland, Elizabeth Rose, and May Malik. And if anybody I missed, raise your hand. Well, that was bad advice.
Craig, Rebecca, Billy, Elizabeth. Who else? I'm sorry. Oh, here, I can find it probably.
Craig, Rebecca, Dangor,
Russell.
Billy Russell, Elizabeth Rose, and May Malik.
Okay, great. Thank you.
May I lower all the hands? Alita was wanting to speak though.
Thank you. I just wanted to propose another resolution for a neutral letter solely related to zoning to be approved by the committee chairs of the Zoning and Development Committee and by Russell as chair of the board.
Oh. Michelle appears to have, and Marco appear to have second. Instead, perhaps, of a very long discussion, I suspect someone might call the question.
Anthony, I think you, if you don't mind my saying so, since I'm still unmuted, I think you need to call on Barbara Chalky because she hasn't been called on and
but
her
she didn't
hand's
raise her
up.
hand. Where is she?
It's up now. I can see it.
Really? Oh, I'm sorry. I missed it. My fault. My fault. Okay. I'm sorry, Barbara. I was in the wrong place in the scroll.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Okay. I think that Valerie is the one that said, and I started off going, I would have supported this a while ago. But the more I think about it, Valerie, I think I said, I don't think there should be any major zoning changes until January. And we don't even know. I'm so confused what the letter's going to say and what it does. First of all, I don't think you can write a neutral letter. I'm not sure what a neutral letter really means. It means you're not really doing anything if you send a neutral letter. And I have a lot of problems with the zoning changes, but I don't think it's the time to do it yet. And I think we need to hear more and know what's going on. And then I agree that we should really work on the city council if they can, which will change drastically in January too. So whatever that happens now can change in January there too. So I really am not comfortable. I don't think we know enough. I don't think it's just a good time to do this. Thank you.
I agree.
I didn't want to hijack this. Go ahead, Elizabeth, call on others.
Okay, who's got a paw up now?
Rebecca Dangor.
Okay, I was, I guess, already unmuted. Just a couple comments. One, again, I guess this wouldn't be a resolution for a letter. It would just be in support of the letter. And again, I maintain that no matter how we vote, it's still at Russell's discretion. But I would like if the letter is approved, that it be sent to everyone in attendance of the meeting, if that's something that people would be okay with.
Then what we after that, how do we deal with something we haven't voted on tonight?
No, I mean, if we vote to approve a letter about strictly related to zoning, which I thought was what was on the floor, that it be sent to all of the people in attendance
for
so that they could add their
or,
comments. No, once the letter is written. So because we're voting on something we haven't seen the text of. If that makes sense.
No. Anybody in favor of that?
Do you have hands up, but not necessarily in favor of that, but you do have other hands up still.
Billy and Elizabeth Rose gave reactions to be in favor of that. So.
I don't know whether the hands up are what for.
I think they're just all still up to speak on the topic.
They were all the same hands that were there when I would raise my hand, if that helps.
Rebecca asked if people would be in favor of this. I think we'll just have to go through and see what people think. Michelle?
Michelle, unmute.
I thought I had, I'm sorry. Any letter that goes out about zoning needs to come from the zoning committee. So whatever happens in transportation or anywhere else, that's fine. It doesn't preclude anything that we're doing here. But this is on zoning, should come from the zoning committee. Now, while I appreciate that Rebecca, that it is a good idea for everybody to see it, I'm not sure that you need 8 participants, 8 editors on a letter. I think if we've made ourselves clear that it's about zoning, we're raising our concerns about zoning, I trust the co-chairs and the chair, and Alita, I think, should be part of that to write a letter. But it definitely should come from the zoning committee. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I understood that the council has already passed this into permanence, correct? Anthony is nodding.
Yes.
So while it's going to be very, very important at some point to write to the council when they're setting rules and regulations or whatever they're doing, and we should have comments from every one of our committees, to send a letter now to them asking them to hold off on this vote this is a fait accompli. So that's a complete waste of time. I think we can, as individuals or our individual organizations or the community board, if they want to as a whole, write a letter to them telling them that we're very, a different letter, that we're very concerned that this was basically done in the dark of night, that we think community boards should have had input, is that it affects what's happening on our streets, and that we're expressing our disapproval of the city council having gone ahead and done this, especially when a whole new speaker, new mayor, and 32 new council members will be coming in. You know, I think we should definitely write that letter. So if whatever that speaks to, I don't know if Russell will go along with that. And if not, we can certainly do it as our own individual selves. But this letter has to come out of the zoning committee. And so, and I think 5 people on a committee to write it is quite enough. If you want to just send it around as a fait accompli, as a courtesy to those of us who are here tonight, that's great, but not for any editing input. Too complicated.
Thank you. Elaine?
I'd like to call the question on the letter that's been proposed.
Let's see, Michelle and Marco again have seconded. So now we go back to all in favor of, oh no, let's do it. We'll do it so it's the same both times. All those against calling the question, raise your hands. So then we'll do them both the same way. I'm sorry, I screwed up last time. Everyone, it appears, wants to call the question. So that appears to have passed unanimously. Now Barbara has her hand up now. On the matter of calling the question, Barbara, if Will or Max, you could unmute her.
Barbara, you can unmute at any time. Barbara Chalky.
No, I was for calling the question. Now I'm voting.
Okay, we're gonna lower your hand because hand up.
We're gonna start over. Okay.
All those against abstaining or not voting for cause on sending the letter, raise your hand. Russell? Your vote?
I'm abstaining, but if it passes, which it appears it has, I will work with the co-chairs to craft a neutral letter.
Craig?
I'm a no.
Anyone else? Okay, that motion passed, I believe.
Yes, it did.
We just have to read everyone's name into the record.
Oh.
Okay.
Do you want to do that, or I can do it? It doesn't matter. You
Sure.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, sure. All right, I see we have Craig, Russell, Barbara, Gail, Rita, Michelle, Alita, Ed, Elaine, Rebecca, Elizabeth, Mashpee, Adam Wald, Marco, Valerie, Anthony, Peter, Elizabeth Rose, Billy, and check. I believe that is it.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item is our proposal for height limits of 210 feet, special zoning districts on 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and York Avenues. But I'm going to ask Gail Barron to report on the finances, but I just like to make one little comment. I very much supported the motion to close the loopholes, but I think that just takes a tiny little squirrel's nibble at the corner of the problem. New York is full of people who are looking for more loopholes. Every time we close a loophole, somebody's going to find another. And I think by closing loopholes, we'll finally solve the problem about in the year 3000. If we get what we want, which is the height limit of 210, that's not subject to interpretation. 210 feet is 210 feet, even if it's Tuesday or Thursday or raining or whatever. There is no loophole to a number. And so I think what we've been fighting for ages is something we should get very soon. And but it's we have the money, but getting the money out of, like blood out of a stone. So Gail, could you tell us where we are?
Well, from what I understand, as most of you know, we sent the contract to the city just about 6 months ago. It is still currently in the city's law department, and we're 2 months out before the fiscal year ends. So obviously, we're all very concerned because until the contract is signed, we have not found an alternate way, I understand, to be able to pay the consultant. Now, Will has been working diligently on this with Russell, so perhaps the two of you can give us the most current update as to where we stand. Thank you.
Very happy to. Unless, yeah, Russell.
Go ahead.
So I received some very exciting news that I think everybody will applaud. So the contract had to be sent to the city law department to review whether the contract was legal to, was legal for the city to agree to. And that was where it was until today, where it has been signed as to form, which is contractees for the contract is fitting to be dispersed to the two parties, a copy for Russell to get notarized and signed and a copy for Tuck to get signed. Once both parties have agreed to the agreement, we will then have to submit it to the controller's office. But the good news is that we were told by Adele, the general counsel from the BP's office, that the work can start on the project, assuming all things are good, that we will submit it to the controller's office, and during the 1 month period that it takes them to review it, hopefully there are no problems, but that we're given the go ahead that effective basically May 1st, he'll be able to start working.
Oh, well, thank you. That's
Good
wonderful news. I
Nice
thought we were all
present.
going to die of old age before we ever got through this.
Terrific. Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The last thing I'll just report is another piece of no news. The Lenox Hill Hospital seems to be a bit dormant. So is anyone interested in moving to adjourn?
Barbara Chucky's actually had her hand up for a little while. Maybe to do that, I don't know.
Who, Barbara Chucky?
Yes, Barbara Chucky, try unmuting again. You muted, there you go. Barbara, you are unmuted right now, you can speak.
Oh, okay. But the last vote, my computer went out for a minute. I wanted to abstain from the last vote.
Okay, got it.
All right,
Okay.
and Gail Barron, you have your hand up?
Gail?
She says she's leaving it off.
Oh, no.
Motion to adjourn. I don't, if that is that.
That sounds good. Rebecca has seconded and Marco also made the motion. So
Okay.
thank you all for being so incredibly patient. Good night.